Generation 5, currently the middle point in the Pokemon franchise, and what's now a popular vote for the best generation of all time. But is it really? Is this just nostalgia, or is it legit? Today I ask the question, how good was Gen 5 actually? Let's establish a couple things. Number 1, I will be spoiling almost everything in these games, both the originals and the sequels. These games are almost 12 and 14 years old now, but spoiler warning. Number 2, it was my birthday recently, and you should give me a late birthday present by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It's free, helps out a ton, and tells YouTube to show this to more people. We're on that road to 100,000, and I would appreciate it if you subscribed. And number 3, let's establish my history with Gen 5. I played about 100 hours between my black and white original copies as a young teenager, and never really touched them again. And it was only about a couple years ago maybe that I played through Black 2 for the first time, but it was on emulator and I was using speed up to blast through all of the story. So suffice to say, before this video, I barely remembered Gen 5 at all. So I can come at this from a mostly non-nostalgia driven point of view. So let's get into it, and let's unveil the mysterious world of Unova. Of course, we'll be starting with the originals for the sake of the video, but I may or may not have played the sequels first, because I intended on the video just being about Black and White 2, before deciding I needed to play the originals too. We boot up the game and get a lore-driven intro cinematic. What looks to be a young man who is close with Pokemon, being coronated, receiving a crown, with what appears to be many loyal subjects surrounding him. Before we can ask ourselves what this intro could mean, we transition to our standard Pokemon intro montage. But I would say this is probably one of the weakest in the entire series. Mainly I just don't like the text in these shots. Just because we can render Adobe fonts now, doesn't mean we should. We'll be playing on my childhood copy of Pokemon Black and a White 2 game that I bought from eBay. And this is exactly why you should play on emulator. But perhaps this absurdly high price tag says something. Maybe these are actually good games after all. We hit the new game button and are greeted with the classic professor opening cutscene. This is Professor Juniper, our first lead professor, who is a woman. She doesn't have a shiny Minccino though. Having played the male character in White 2 already, I went with the grill this time. After naming our character, we're introduced to our two rivals right away, Sharon and Bianca, our childhood friends. This is our first instance of having two rivals immediately at the start of the game, which of course sets us up for each one of us to get a Pokemon of the region's starter trio. The trio is delivered to our house in a rather glorious intro cinematic, introducing the game, introducing us to the art style, introducing the outside world. It's quite the view. We enter our house and see we're in the room with Sharon, and he wonders where Bianca is. She comes in late, and from her dialogue, this seems typical. Is this a commentary on women being late for things, Game Freak? The rivals decide that because the starters were delivered to our house, it would only make sense that we get to pick first, getting us to the starter Pokemon selection screen faster than any other game in the series. Except for Let's Go, I guess technically, because you pick the starter before buying the game. This immediate fast pace to the game I find both good and bad. Good because I think it's better to give you some action right away, but bad because I haven't been able to build up enough suspense on what my starter choice would be. For this playthrough, I chose Tepig. However, this is only because I needed it for the Pokedex on my White 2 save, because I was finishing that up at this point. Snivy's on top, don't get it twisted. With us getting Tepig, Bianca makes the correct choice. Coincidentally, our outfits kinda match the starters we end up with this way. Bianca's so excited that she has a Pokemon, for some reason she can't wait to the 30 seconds it would take to walk outside, and we have to start our first battle in my room. Currently, the room is pretty clean. When I was that age, my room was uninhabitable. Not even ants could survive in there. This is before the games gave you the stab move for your starter right away, so you do have to win this battle with just your normal type move. Not a problem for our young Tepig here. And would you look at that, our Tepig is also a grill. A good start to the run. Ah, that's more like it. After our battle, Sharon heals up our Pokemon, and even though he just scolded Bianca for battling in our room, he gives in to the peer pressure and also wants to have a battle with us. making Sharon seem like the type to say, well, everybody else was doing it, when he gets in trouble. We defeat Sharon as well, getting our first dopamine hit of a Pokemon level up. After our battles, we go downstairs to apologize to our mom for leaving our room a complete mess. My mom probably wouldn't care, but she sure as hell wouldn't be cleaning it for me. She tells us to go thank the professor for our Pokemon, and we step out into the world for the first time. This shot is set up beautifully. From the Pidove being startled into flying away, to Bianca walking down to her house, only after we've stepped outside. It's a subtle hint to follow Bianca down to her house, to see the heartbreaking scene that unfolds. Bianca tells her dad that she would like to go on an adventure, but instead of being supportive, he is outraged at the suggestion. Holy shit! We have an actually good parent in the Pokemon franchise? Someone who doesn't want their 14-year-old to leave the house yet and set off on an adventure alone? A crazy concept. The only reason this ever works is because the Pokemon universe is La La Fantasyland, where truly violent crimes don't exist. Bianca snaps back at her dad, saying she's a good trainer, so she can totally go on an adventure. But she's 0 for 1 in Pokemon battles. She has literally never won a battle. Good trainer, my ass. Seeing us, she leaves and says she'll be at Juniper's lab. Speaking with her parents after, her dad's still fuming, and her mom just says it's time for her to grow up. This from her mom makes sense. We find out later that all of our mothers schemed to kick us all out of the house. Again, these are 14-year-olds. This would be considered child abandonment, and we could have all of our parents arrested, all because they wanted more time to watch their soap operas. Though we forgive them, because going on a Pokemon journey is better than foster care. We all meet up at the lab, where Juniper gives us the usual professor spiel, asking us all to go on a journey to help them study Pokemon by battling and capturing them. Wait, maybe PETA is right. This does sound like animal cruelty. We receive our Pokedex, and Juniper wants to show us how to catch Pokemon. Our mom is outside the lab, there to give us all a town map, and saying her final goodbye before kicking me out of the house for good. And we set off on our journey, heading to Route 1, where Juniper is waiting. She gets us into the catching tutorial, where this is the first, and I believe only time that this is done by the professor. But Pokemon Yellow kinda counts, I guess? From here, Juniper rather responsibly goes on ahead of us to Accumula Town, not only allowing us to get our feet wet with the lower level Pokemon around, but once we arrive in town, she's the one who gives us a tour of the Pokemon Center and all of its functionality. She shows us it's where you heal your Pokemon, store and retrieve extra Pokemon, and tells us about the shop, which is now inside the Pokemon Center for convenience. While gameplay-wise, this going from an optional thing to a forced tutorial over the years can be kind of annoying at times, lore-wise, this gives us added respect for Professor Juniper. She could be off studying that Patrat she just got, or watching the soap operas with her parents, but instead is going out of her way to help us start our journey off right. She doesn't just send us out and say, "Now don't talk to me until you've finished the Pokedex." Going forward, we'll see this hands-on guidance from her continue, giving her a good case for the Best Professor Award. After we leave the Poke Center, there's an odd gathering happening in the center of town. This is our rather early introduction to the evil team, Team Plasma. And it's not just one random grunt, it's a full-on gathering of the team, with an obviously important story character giving a speech. His name is Getsis, and he talks about how trainers selfishly order their Pokemon around for their own benefit, and that Pokemon are living beings that are able to make their own decisions, reasoning that Pokemon should be liberated and free to do as they wish, freed of the tyranny of the Pokeballs that confine them so. And when you think about it, is what he's saying entirely wrong? Do we not just kidnap Pokemon from their homes in the wild and force them to obey our every command in battle? Did the Pokemon really ever have a choice in the matter? Meanwhile, we're thinking, I'm playing a Pokemon game, and there are in-lore politics going on? This is actually kinda cool. Not only do politics happen in this game, but they are one of the major themes we'll see throughout. After the speech, the townsfolk are just confused, not sure what or if they should do anything. They all go back about their business of being random NPCs, except for one person. Sharon and I are just kind of looking at each other after this interaction. this final person at the scene walks over to us. He seems startled, specifically by our Pokemon, claiming that our Pokemon was apparently saying something to him. Because this seemed outlandish, Sharon tells him to slow his roll and talk like a normal person. He introduces himself as N. Sharon then introduces the two of us, and that we've been asked to complete the Pokedex. He's taken aback by the thought of having to catch many Pokemon in order to do so, and he wonders if us catching these Pokemon would truly make them happy, wanting to hear the voice of our Pokemon again, and then challenges us to a battle. After which, he says he never expected to hear a Pokemon say such things. As he's about to leave, he says Pokemon will never become perfect if they are confined in Pokeballs, and that he wants to change the world for Pokemon because he sees them as his friends. Once he leaves, Sharon and I go, well, that was weird, but he seems to not think much about either of these interactions, and tells us he wants to go on ahead to the next route to get to Striation City. That way he can challenge the Pokemon Gym. From this, and our conversation with N, we gather that Sharon is the competitive type, wanting to become the best trainer he can possibly be, wanting to become strong enough to become the Pokemon League champion, and he's well aware that his path to doing so involves challenging each of the gym leaders in order to grow stronger. Before I follow in his footsteps, I take some time to go around town. I wanted to explore just about everything in these games, which included talking to every NPC as I went along. While not every NPC can be interesting by nature, there are a handful of NPCs that are, and are designed to give you a memorable experience for going out of your way to engage with them. Main characters should obviously be fleshed out too, but these random side characters are arguably the real heart and soul of our video games, especially when they do something really neat, like when you talk to them, they start playing their instrument, and you can actually hear it in the background music, adding to the depth of the soundtrack. This interaction with these two NPCs shows off what Pokemon is able to do at this point with the improved technology they have, and it also just boosts the Accumula Town soundtrack to one of the best Pokemon songs of all time. So compelling that a Furret could walk to it for years. After talking with all of the NPCs I could, I left for Route 2. Before we can get too far, we get a call from our mom. She catches up with us and gives us the running shoes. One thing you can't help but ask here is, why did it always take so long to get these? If you're paying attention to everything, this takes at least 20 or so minutes to get, and over 30 minutes if you go talk to all of the NPCs like I did. That's one thing we can definitely be thankful for in the 3D era, as they finally realized you would realistically probably grab the running shoes on your way out of the house the first time. And I would say in this game in particular, it slows down the pace quite a bit. So much so, one of the Japanese copies I bought didn't even make it past Accumula Town. Apparently there wasn't enough action for them, and having running shoes earlier would get you into the action quicker. Once we make it to Route 2, we get quite a bit more action, as we have a few trainers for us to battle. And this includes Bianca at the end of the route, making it so the toughest trainer of the route is the last one we battle. A pretty common design choice in Pokemon, and hell, that's how all of the gyms are structured. But one thing we might take notice of is she's barely stronger than the other trainers of the route. The other trainers all having one level 7 Pokemon, while Bianca has a level 7 and a level 6. This is an early neat little detail about Bianca that might be easily overlooked. Rival battles are usually a good bit stronger than the surrounding trainers in wild Pokemon. It further strengthens a dynamic that Bianca has with us. She's designed to be the easy rival, being weak to our starter. But she's also designed to be an easier rival by just not being quite as strong as Sharon or the player character. And we can see this right away once we win the battle and get into the city. We heal up our Pokemon and are directed toward the Pokemon Trainer School, where we end up having a battle with Sharon. In this same time, Sharon has been able to get both of his Pokemon to level 8. Establishing him to be the tougher rival. His desire to be the best trainer he can be, having a clear end goal in mind for what he wants to accomplish, makes him give it that extra effort, and that's reflected in his Pokemon's levels. For now, I've taken the 2D era approach to our team though, piling all of our levels onto our starter until further notice, allowing us to take out his team with ease. After fighting him, the gym will now be accessible to us. One of the gym leaders is standing outside and not so subtly directs us to the Dream Yard. telling us we need to prepare to face water-type Pokemon because we chose our fire-type starter. How convenient that there just so happens to be someone who gives you the type of Pokemon you need in the Dream Yard. We can kind of assume that she's being paid to do this by the gym leaders because the elemental monkeys aren't found around here, and on top of that, they aren't naturally found at this low of a level, so supposedly the gym leaders breed a bunch of their elemental monkeys to have them given away to any aspiring young trainers who want to challenge the gym. Unfortunately, this is where I have to voice some serious frustration with this point in the game. This is the first game in the series to introduce level-based experience gain, meaning the higher your opponent's level relative to yours, the more experience you gain, and the lower the opponent's level, the less experience you gain. And this ends up being a major problem for the first gym. Even with loading all of my levels onto Tepig, fighting every trainer, and knocking out every wild Pokemon I had seen to this point, Tepig was still a lower level than Cress's Panpour. Thankfully, they understood that there might be some hiccups with training Pokemon because of the system, so there's a bonus feature for wild Pokemon. Occasionally, you will find shaking patches of grass while out and about. These grass patches usually contain Pokemon that you won't be able to find in that grass normally, but depending on the route, these shaking grass patches have between a 45 to 100% chance to be a certain Pokemon. This Pokemon is Audino, and upon knocking it out, you get one of the highest experience payouts of all time. The only problem is, it's locked until after you have the first badge. This essentially forces you to use an underleveled elemental monkey, or forces you to grind for at least a half hour or so to get it up to the level of the gym leader. While type matchups are certainly important, are they so important as to shoehorn the player into a precarious situation for their first badge? Or, at the very least, an annoyingly long grinding session on wild Pokemon? I feel like there was a bit of a missed opportunity here. The shaking patches could have been locked until after you receive the elemental monkey, perhaps to make sure you get it. And then, while leaving the Dream Yard, have Sharon or Bianca come by and tell you, hey, I just saw something cool. There was a patch of rustling grass, and I found an Audino. I talked to the professor, and she said for some reason, knocking out wild Audino is really helpful for training your team. While this would take away the reward of finding the random NPC in the game that says this, it would serve the player well as a formal introduction to the most efficient way to grind experience in the game. Once we're brave enough to enter the gym, we'll get a completely linear path to follow. A typical sight to see in the first gym, as it being too complex would be a major turnoff. Even though the game puts us into a precarious situation for this badge, it's not quite that bad, as the gym leader seems to only want to use their elemental move. His Panpour was +2, and with Pansage being 3 levels lower, a Fury Swipes would have surely been trouble. But instead they opt for Water Gun, allowing us to score a lucky crit to win the fight, though this only balanced out the crit he got on the first turn. After winning, we receive perhaps the most broken first TM of all time, Workup, a setup move for both physical and special attackers after the first gym is quite nuts. On our way outside, we are stopped by one of Juniper's colleagues, Fennel. We follow her to her lab and she gives us the Cut HM, and also tasks us with going to the Dream Yard for Dream Mist, which is a strange substance produced by Muna and Musharna. So we head back to the Dream Yard and Bianca is there to help us look around. But as we find ourselves a Muna, a pair of Team Plasma grunts storm onto the scene. They start violently smacking the Muna, trying to get it to give up its Dream Mist, as they too are seeking it for something they're planning. They want to show people dreams that will influence them to release their Pokemon. With this encounter, the game wants us to read a message here. Pokemon liberation is a somewhat noble goal for the evil team to have, but it's their actions they take to try to achieve that goal that make them the evil team. The end won't justify the means if the means are plainly immoral. They realize in addition to gathering the Dream Mist, they would also like to liberate our Pokemon from us. So naturally, it's time to stop them. Honestly, it would have been nice if this part was done before the gym badge. Since their Pokemon are level 10, it would have provided some much needed experience at that point. After defeating both of them, Getsus appears, freaking out the Team Plasma grunts. This causes them to scurry off, but this wasn't actually Getsus. It was just an illusion shown to them by a nearby Musharna, presumably the parent of the Muna they were attacking. Fennel arrives, prompting the Pokemon to leave, dropping behind some Dream Mist as thanks for helping them out. Now that Fennel has the Dream Mist, she thanks us at her place by giving us the Sea Gear, finally allowing me to trade Tepig over to White too. so I can finally complete the Pokedex over there. So that's what I did with the rest of my day, and I would come back to Black a couple days later. Before I would do anything else though, I decided to make things a little more fun. I'm not sure if we just unlocked it or not, but we have the ability to get mystery gifts now. If you didn't know, there's a legacy server that we can connect to with the right DS internet settings, allowing us to get a good amount of past mystery gifts via internet. It'll randomly produce one of the authentic mystery gifts from the Gen 5 era. Between the originals and the sequels, this allows you to still get all of the mythical Pokemon of Gen 5, as well as a few other interesting gifts. And I had to do this already in order to complete the Pokedex for White 2, so I decided why not. Before moving on in-game, I would talk to the remaining NPCs in Striation, as well as add a Keldeo and a Larvitar to the team. The Black and White event for Keldeo was level 15, and this Shiny Larvitar event was level 5, making them reasonable additions to the team at this point. Though the Larvitar has a special move, Superpower, which might be a tad strong for this point in the game. But come on, Game Freak had to have made the event level 5 for some reason, right? With this power, we can easily clear the trainers on Route 3, as well as Sharon, who we are already fighting for the 3rd time. Is it just me, or is this a little much for this point in the game? We fought Sharon before the badge, and just after stepping on the next route, we have to fight him again. If they had waited until the end of the route, or after the next story event, maybe making him a level higher to compensate for that, then I might not have thought anything of it. But fighting him this much confirms another dynamic between him and Bianca. In your fights, Sharon won't use potions, and instead opts for held items. Just on his starter at first, but he'll eventually have a held item on everyone, whereas Bianca never has a held item on her Pokemon, and will instead opt to use potions throughout your battles with her. An interesting addition to the two-rival system we have here. After beating Sharon, it's time for some more trouble with Team Plasma. This time, they've stolen a little girl's Pokemon. But in their eyes, she's holding this Pokemon hostage and can't bring out its true potential because she's just a child. And use that same reasoning to challenge us to try taking our Pokemon. There are 2 waves of grunts here, doing a single battle and then a double battle with Sharon. After winning, we get the Pokemon back for the little girl, and are able to move on to the rest of Route 3. Once at the end, we reach Nakreen City, where the residents live in old storage buildings. How thrifty. Before we can explore, we're stopped by Sharon. Presumably he's trying to make sure that after the rough time on Route 3 that we make it to the Pokemon Center okay. But his dialogue just doesn't reflect these statements at all. And instead, this bit is just some unnecessary handholding. He pulls you to the Pokemon Center, gives you Chesto Berries, and then lets you know that the gym leader uses normal type Pokemon, and then walks off in the other direction, which just so happens to have a fighting type Pokemon. Why exactly would he give you the Chesto Berries? Well, how convenient. The gym leader's Watchog knows hypnosis. Are we supposed to gather that Sharon already defeated the gym leader here? He really shouldn't have had the time to do so unless he was doing so under-leveled. Whether it's a blatant hand-holding or ominous clairvoyance, this does aid in painting a clearer picture of Sharon. The tone of his dialogue is very down to business. He's a no-nonsense type of guy. He has a rather blunt way of speaking, and he's likely written this way to even further contrast Bianca. After talking around with the NPCs, I head over to the gym. But before I can enter, I'm stopped by the man himself, N, who doesn't exchange any sort of formalities, and just starts absolutely yapping, wanting to see the ideals of Pokemon inside their balls. Why are you talking about their balls, bro? Little weird. But he's here for a battle, and what you might find interesting from this battle is he no longer has his Purloin. This is definitely not standard for Pokemon trainers that we frequently encounter. Usually they keep most, if not all of their Pokemon from fight to fight. Some substitutions might be made when it makes sense, but he still only has 3 Pokemon, and he has room for more. We'll have to check in on this later. After defeating N, we're able to go into the Nakreen Museum, and in the back of the museum is the city's Pokemon gym. This is something a bit different about Gen 5. Many of the gyms have a unique exterior design, unlike previous entries in the series. This was an interesting design idea they tried that ultimately doesn't seem to have stuck, as recent games have gone back to copy-pasted exteriors. I wasn't quite ready for the gym just yet, so after unlocking the path to the gym leader, I went west towards towards the Pinwheel Forest. I did some training in the area for about 20 minutes before taking on the second gym leader, Lenora. I'm not exactly starved for type advantage here, so I used Caldeo, one of my fighting types. Somehow, Watchog was able to survive a double kick, allowing it to get a hypnosis off. I bet you wish you would have given it a Chesto Berry, huh? Past me. Something I didn't know going into this is Caldeo's moveset is pretty frickin' terrible. It's primarily a special attacker that learns 2 special moves naturally, and Double Kick is our best fighting type move until level 43. But you know, it's a unique Pokemon, and I guess it still fills the water type hole, so we'll rock with it. After the gym battle, we once again have another run-in with Team Plasma. This time, a full gang of them storms the museum in order to liberate the dragon fossil of its head. See what I did there? One might be sick of Team Plasma by now, but I think it's rather good to have the evil team be so prevalent here in the early game. You can see firsthand just how much trouble they're causing for everybody, making it that much sweeter for you when you take down the evil team for good. After they run off with the Dragon Skull, we need to look for these Team Plasma hooligans. During the commotion, the next gym leader, Berg, shows up, as well as Bianca and Sharon. We aren't sure where Team Plasma ran off to, but Berg and I are tasked with searching Pinwheel Forest. Wouldn't it be crazy if they just so happened to go this way?
Crazy? I was crazy once.
Since Pinwheel Forest is split between the road path and the wild path, Berg takes the road path to potentially cut them off if they took the wild path. So naturally on the wild path, we end up finding loads of Team Plasma members, along with other trainers who are inadvertently obstructing this vigilante justice. We find the final grunt at the end of the wild path, and upon defeating him, he will reluctantly hand over the Dragon Skull. After retrieving it, Gorm, a member of the 7 Sages of Team Plasma, shows up, not so vaguely threatening us to avoid interfering with Team Plasma again. But Berg and Lenora come along, and he's a little too scared to deal with 2 gym leaders, so they skedaddle. We hand the skull back to Lenora and are on our way out of the forest. We might choose to engage in a few more battles on the road path first before heading through the north exit, which leads us to the Sky Arrow Bridge. The Sky Arrow Bridge scene is one of the most scenic vistas in all of the Pokemon franchise. Definitely looks better than that overview of Paldea in Gen 9. The winding of the walking path leading into a view of the massive structure with multiple camera angles and the multiple vehicles and boats down below, finishing with a view from above the Castelia City skyline. It was impossible for a younger me to appreciate exactly the heart and soul that Game Freak put into this scene, pushing those 2D 192p graphics to their absolute limit. And this is one thing that earlier generations didn't quite get to have: bonus cinematography. Anything outside of the top-down view was basically limited to the most important story events. And while those are absolutely important, just like with bonus NPCs, bonus points where the game is trying to immerse you into a deeper experience can turn a good game into a great game. We arrive in Castelia City, and I undertake the insane task of trying to speak to everyone here. Before finishing that though, by speaking to a particular NPC, we're able to temporarily leave the city, because of course one of the mystery gifts I received was the Liberty Pass, allowing us to travel to the Liberty Garden. But first a quick intermission, because Victini is awesome. While I don't necessarily love time-gated events that are intended to be released once and forgotten about completely after that, I will say I did absolutely love and adore this event on black and white release. So much so that I begged my dad to get me the second copy of the game just so I could get it again and have the second one. The FOMO was too strong, and he eventually gave in. But I'm happy to report it was a good investment. Authentic English copies go for about $90 to $100 today. So thanks, Dad. This is my main core memory from Generation 5, and probably why Victini is my favorite mythical. Now if Game Freak would only let me shiny hunt the damn thing, it's been 13 years! Come on! The Team Plasma storyline on Liberty Garden actually makes a decent amount of sense. If Team Plasma were to find out about a certain rare and endangered species of Pokemon, and that Pokemon is just locked up in someone's basement, it would likely be their mission to free this Pokemon. But Team Plasma also wants to use this Pokemon for their own purposes. As it is said, whoever has Victini will be victorious in any competition. So we defeat all of the Team Plasma members who invaded the island, and after, we steal Victini for ourselves. Come to think of it, did they really think this part through? Like, maybe if the old rich dude showed up and said, I was trying to keep Victini safe, but I think it would be much safer with a capable trainer. So go on, battle Victini, and show it your strength. But the Team Plasma grunt is the one who says Victini wants to battle us. Which, sure, okay, but we're still stealing it in the end. Which I resolved to steal it in a regular Pokeball this time, taking about 15 minutes to do so. I named it Tino and added it to the party, along with a shiny Palkia? That's a pretty exotic HM slave. Of course I wasn't going to use this in battle though, and if I ever needed to, I would reset the game. To get Tino some training, we would take to the various buildings in Castelia. These buildings have a number of trainers, especially the Battle Company building. But battles are thrown all about the city, including a bit of a side quest involving dancers. If you beat all the dancers in battle, they group up and form a dancing trio, and your reward for bringing them together is the Amulet Coin, a reward that makes bonus content worth doing. Good stuff. After our journey around Liberty Garden and the entirety of Castelia City, I try to go inside the gym, but I'm stopped by Sharon, who just defeated Berg, thanks to the help of his new additions, Panseer and Pidove. After he heads off, Berg comes rushing out of the gym. He's glad to see us, but he's been informed that Team Plasma is in the city. We go to Prime Pier, where we see Bianca, as well as a new, clearly important character. As we get closer, Berg fills us in. They've stolen another Pokemon, but this time, it's from Bianca. How dare Team Plasma steal a Pokemon from our childhood friend? They are going to pay. The thief might have gotten away with taking her Pokemon if it weren't for their own greed. They come back to the scene of the crime, hoping to snag a second Pokemon from Bianca. However, at the sight of a gym leader, they hightail it out of there, giving us the opportunity to chase after them. We learn our new important character is named Iris, and she vows to be Bianca's bodyguard while Berg and I chase after the culprit. Evidently, I didn't actually finish looking around all of Castelia City. Seems as though I missed a few buildings in the back. So during this very important chase scene, I was busy going to a party on the 47th floor. I was also admittedly a little lost on where to go next as well though. But eventually heading back toward the gym, we find Team Plasma posted up at the building across the street. After they attempt to jump us, we get Iris and Bianca to come find us, setting up a full meeting with the crew inside. We having the stare down of the century right now. Not only do we have the 3 Team Plasma grunts there, but we also have 3 members of the 7 sages present as well. We have a long conversation about the creation of the Unova region, the dragon appearing before the hero, who was able to win the hearts of the people, unifying the region. Getsus appears to have a similar strategy in mind to create a world that he desires, which he only says accidentally, claiming it's the vision of the world for all of Team Plasma. It's here we start to see some of the cracks forming in the facade of Team Plasma. Clearly Getsus is using his power in the organization to help further his own interests. And clearly the whole of Team Plasma isn't above using Pokemon as tools to serve their interests as a group. Yet somehow we're supposed to believe that the intent of Team Plasma is to liberate Pokemon and nothing else, to free them from the quote tyranny of their trainers and their Pokeballs. Berg himself expresses some dissenting thoughts on this dilemma. He postures that the bond between people and Pokemon will only go stronger through their plans, especially if they are going about it in this manner, where Team Plasma is basically doing whatever they want to try and achieve their fake goal, causing heartbreak by stealing Pokemon from others. This theoretically would only strengthen the bond that these people have with their other Pokemon, and perhaps would vow to never let a Pokemon be taken from them again, seeking strength and becoming a high-level Pokemon trainer to make sure that that would never happen to them.
Foreshadowing, foreshadowing, foreshadowing.
This hypothetical doesn't exactly define Bianca though. As the group leaves, Getsus instructs the grunt to give Bianca her Muna back, which is all Bianca really wanted, so as a group we take no further action against them at this time. With this behind her, Bianca wants to take a look around the rest of Castelia City, so Iris vows to continue being her bodyguard while she does, and Berg returns to his post at the gym. So finally, about 2.5 hours after entering Castelia City for the first time, we're finally going to be able to take on the gym. I just want to emphasize how much is going on in here. If you ignore all of the bonus areas and NPCs here, you could get to the gym in about 10 minutes. Probably even less if you just mash through all the text. And while sure, about 20 to 30 minutes of this time was from the limited time Victini event, this was the original intended way to play the game, and we're just out here reliving that. When it comes to a city this big in the game, it brings to mind why would all of this be here if you weren't supposed to interact with all of it? And that certainly seems to be how they designed most of the gym trainers in this game. If we're keeping tabs on the number of skippable gym trainers, I believe Gym 3 finally provides our first one. And I was relieved enough by the sight of this that I actually skipped them. There are 2 skippable trainers in here, hidden in switches, but still a healthy diet of 2 or 3 that you're forced to battle. Finally, a well-balanced gym. We'll see if that continues. But this is a gym I could have been forced to fight every trainer in, seeing as I have 2 fire types. So the bug type gym trainers wouldn't exactly be challenging, but I was still playing it safe, swapping to Caldeo for our bug rock type. Tino handled the others, doing so in 2 hits easily, even being a couple levels below Leavanny. Of course, the 4 times weakness helped there though. After receiving our badge from Berg and exiting the gym, we get a call from Bianca. She wants to meet up for a battle at the gate to Route 4. Having trained up a little bit with Iris while we were busy at the gym, she's now a lot more confident in her battling capabilities. Would she be able to beat the gym with this team? Maybe, maybe not. But she does cover my type weaknesses pretty well. But I've got mythical Pokemon, so she goes down pretty easy. This leaves her slightly upset, but she's been thinking about what it is she wants to do. She understands she probably won't be as strong a trainer as the player or Sharon, but is happy with what this journey has been teaching her about the world and about herself. While she's not sure about exactly what she wants to do just yet, she knows that she wants to be with Pokemon. And this can teach us an important lesson about ourselves. Even if we're unsure about how things are currently going in our lives, we can treat everything we're doing as a learning experience. Learning more about the world and learning more about ourselves. And even if we're falling on tough times, not sure what our next step is going to be, we can take comfort in knowing whatever that next step is, it's going to be with our friends and family. Bianca heads back to the city, expressing her desire to see us again soon. Meanwhile, on the route ahead, Sharon is there waiting for us, ready to challenge us to yet another battle. Let's keep in mind that this is battle number 4 with Sharon now, with us having 3 badges. But it is rather good for our Sharon hard, Bianca easy dynamic to have a battle with each of them this close together. From the levels of his Pokemon, we can see that Sharon is about 10 to 20% stronger than Bianca at this point. Not only this, but he also has a fully evolved Pokemon already, Liepard. While we have all of the types we need to cover for his team, the fact that he also has 4 Pokemon that are about to be at level with the gym leader at this point poses a bit of a challenge to the traditional only train your starter strategy. One of the random NPCs you meet in the game suggests training 3 Pokemon for a good balance, and that's about how many it took to beat his team comfortably. After our battle, Juniper calls all of us, though Bianca, interestingly, doesn't answer this call. She tells us to meet her at the gate to Nimbasa City, so that's where we're headed next. And I'd like to take a moment to just say, what the hell is Route 4? While for gameplay reasons it's important to have different biomes for our Pokemon, Route 4 just feels so artificially desert. What I mean by that is it's just normal city, then desert, then normal city. The only separation from the desert the cities have are the standard sized route barriers, which makes it feel not as natural. Don't get me wrong, it makes sense for the desert to be its own route, and it's certainly not starved for content, being rather large, but some type of transition at the beginning or end, or to have one of the cities be affected by the presence of the desert would go a long way. We arrive at the gate to Nimbasa City, and Juniper is there as expected. She thought she'd give us a little something to help us in catching more Pokemon, and gives us some Ultra Balls. A rather solid gift with us having 3 gym badges, as it will take a few more badges for us to be able to buy them on our own. Here's Juniper, out here making sure our journeys are going well. This isn't an instance where we simply bumped into each other while she was out researching. She deliberately made sure to meet up with us here. Her goal in doing so and giving us this gift may have had a hidden selfish interest. Of course, the Ultra Balls would help us out in further completing the Pokedex, but this is through a caring and thoughtful gesture, and this is how you get people to do things you want willingly. And that shows that Juniper has good leadership skills, perhaps contributing to her position as the Regent's professor at what appears to be a pretty young age. She heads off to check up on Bianca, who's still behind, catching up with us. Sharon decides to show the professor his gratitude by catching a couple more Pokemon for the Pokedex before proceeding, while we head into Nimbasa City to witness Team Plasma bullying an old man. Seeing a strong-looking trainer, he hides behind us while we defeat the baddies. and once they're gone, he thanks us by giving us the bicycle. Finally, this is part of the reason why I was making sure to go everywhere in Castelia, because you get the bike there in the sequels. But as it turns out, this is the daycare man. I'm assuming this means that this is when you unlock breeding in this game, but I never checked if it was possible before this. He thanks us, then leaves, and as he's making his exit from Nimbasa City, Bianca makes her entrance. She tells us Juniper said there was a lot to do in Nimbasa, and she's not wrong. We have the small court, the big stadium, the Pokemon musical, the battle subway, and the amusement park. For now, Bianca heads toward the Pokemon musical, while we go heal up at the Pokemon Center. Inside, a fine gentleman tells us there's someone in a nearby house that will give us the HM for strength. What a kind sir both of them are. We take a bit of a tour around the city, talking to the various NPCs, before heading into the Pokemon musical building. Once inside, Bianca and I are greeted by the owner of the theater, who makes us play dress up with Tino. Looking quite dapper there, friend. Afterward, Bianca decides she's not quite ready for a musical just now, so she decides to check out more of the city. We talk to everybody else inside, and on our way out, Daddy? We find a heart-wrenching scene. Bianca's dad has traveled all the way here to come take her back home, but Bianca still wants to continue her travels. This time, she actually does a better job of defending her position, but it's not until the gym leader comes over and drops in on the conversation that her dad realizes that he's perhaps being a bit childish. Which again, him trying to get her back home would be W parenting, at least at this age with Bianca being 14. Her dad decides Bianca should continue her travels and entrusts us to take care of her, and he walks off, adding one more bad parent to the world of Pokemon. Elisa apologizes if what she did was rude, but tells us both to stop by the gym to show us how tough a Pokemon journey can really get. Bianca didn't think it was rude, she thought Elisa was cool, and says she wants to be a cool woman too someday, but wonders how she'll get there. I go to explore the rest of the city, and if we step into one of the stadiums, it's pretty evident that we're not quite yet ready for the gym, as the levels have jumped up quite a bit, though perhaps the reason is I initially skipped the desert resort, so I went through and did just about everything I could in the surrounding routes. But this is where I went on vacation to California to visit my buddy Steve, so the subsequent footage is going to look slightly different. Don't freak out on me now. But how about I freak out for a quick tangent here? As I shared on my community tab, I bought a MacBook to be able to work on this while I was gone. I recorded a couple hours of footage using OBS and Qt Capture, and this caused a massive headache for scriptwriter me. I just needed to transfer the video files to my PC, and could not for the life of me figure out why I couldn't. All you do is drag and drop to the external drive, right? Well, yes, but actually no. For some reason, it worked completely fine to transfer files to the Mac. However, transferring things off of the Mac was a different story. I spent probably 45 minutes troubleshooting what was happening, with Google and Apple's websites not being remotely helpful. I finally look it up on YouTube, and the video I found tells me the drive is not in the right format. Understandable, because Mac and Windows speak in different languages. But instead of giving me a circle with a line through it telling me no, how about you give me a pop-up telling me what the actual problem is? Back to our scheduled programming. I backtracked to the desert resort, as well as progressing as far as I could on Route 5, Route 16, and Lost Lorn Forest, and doing big stadium and small court fights again before heading to the amusement park. Upon getting inside, we're greeted by who else but N. He thinks we're looking for the Team Plasma Grunts who were bullying the daycare man, but it had been 3 days since that happened and I completely forgot that detail. He suggests we go ride the Ferris wheel to see if we'd be able to spot them, so up we go. What else can I say? But this scene is a classic. Even if you don't remember the full details of why this scene exists, you probably still remember that it's there. Perhaps because this is when N reveals to us that he is the king of Team Plasma. He reveals that Getsis asked him to work with them to help save the Pokemon, and then he simply wonders how many Pokemon exist in the world. If only he knew it was about double what it used to be. Perhaps we can extract some deeper meaning from this scene. We understand that N doesn't see us as just a normal person. We're a Pokemon trainer, of course, but he doesn't see us as a normal trainer either. Our Pokemon are intriguing to him, before having said things that he didn't expect to hear from them. So perhaps he still wants to remain somewhat friendly towards us in an effort to speak with them more, and find out what makes our Pokemon really tick. We'll have to see what his real intentions are. For now, when we get off the Ferris wheel, the Team Plasma members spot us with N and are grateful he is okay. He tells them to get out of here, and that he'll battle us to buy some time for them to get away. What are we gonna do? Arrest them? All the police officers in the region are either security for the Pokemon musical or in Liberty Garden for some reason. N knows that he probably won't win this battle, and after a few minutes we prove that thought to be correct. And if we're astute, we may again notice that he has a completely different team, this one made up of Pokemon only found in the desert area. Even with his loss, he still has his ultimate goal in mind, to change the future. He reveals his plan for doing so is to beat the Pokemon League champion, and to become an unbeatable trainer, at the same time directly challenging us to do the same. And if we want to keep people and Pokemon together, we must defeat all the gym leaders, the Elite Four, and become the champion. And we must do this to prevent N from making everyone release their Pokemon. And after issuing his challenge, he walks away. Perhaps after receiving this challenge from N, we walk into the Nimbasa City Gym with a renewed sense of purpose, and aim to fight the gym like we're on a mission. I took on the gym trainers, then did some TM teaching to my Pokemon, only just now finding out that Simisage can learn Dig, and I kinda evolved it pretty early, so any decent move is an improvement to the moveset. But even though this is an electric type gym, having ground type moves isn't exactly the best strategy, because for some reason they only gave her 2 Emolga and a Zebstrika, meaning 2/3 of her Pokemon are immune to Electric's only weakness in ground. It's not exactly like we're starved for electric types in this region, but I guess the vision here was you need to have at least seen these evolution lines before. But would anyone really complain if we saw a Joltik or Tynamo line in this gym? Hell, if they went Tynamo line, you'd still have Levitate, which would still remove the ground type weakness for that slot. And those lines are available to use rather soon anyway, gaining access to them after the next badge. Thankfully, we have a Larvitar, immune to her electric type attacks, and able to hit Emolga with super effective rock type moves. I opted to keep Superpower instead of teaching it Dig, so we just keep rock sliding Zebstrika till we get the badge. And that's 4 badges down, 4 to go. But aren't we forgetting something? We're not sure, as we head on to Route 5 after the gym. Oh, there he is. It's time to fight Sharon again. I don't think this many rival battles with one rival would have been an issue on its own, but more so that we essentially have 3 rivals in this game as it is. If you count N, Sharon, and Bianca all as rivals, they combined for 16 rival fights before fighting the Elite Four. And this means on average we're fighting 2 of them per badge, making it just about a guarantee you'll be dealing with at least one of them after every badge or before entering a city. But hold on, this doesn't quite add up either. Sharon says he got the Bolt badge, but if you choose Tepig, he has 2 members weak to electric, and not much going for him otherwise. Did he just spam Yawn with Pansear, and presumably Elisa just used nothing but Pursuit and Quick Attack? That's about the only way I see him winning that. After defeating Sharon for the 5th time, we get a pretty interesting event happening on Route 5 before proceeding. Elisa is coming with us to lower the drawbridge to Driftvale. However, before we get there, Elisa is stopped by someone, and this just so happens to be Alder, the champion of the Unova region. Sharon proceeds to make a bit of an ass of himself in this scene, Alder calling him quite judgmental. He talks with Sharon and finds out he wants to become champion, doing so to become the strongest trainer he can. Nice man. While he commends Sharon for having a goal in mind, he's not sure if he's thinking about it in the right way. To attempt to teach him a lesson, he has us battle a couple of preschoolers. This battle, of course, didn't quite change Sharon's mind, but it does cause him to reflect on it and reaffirm why it is he's trying to get stronger. As we head into Driftvale City by crossing the drawbridge, as soon as we get into town, the gym leader, Clay, stops us. Who else but Team Plasma had been causing trouble in the city, and they had actually been apprehended this time. Whoa! But they were able to escape, and it's apparently our fault. So Clay won't have a battle with us until we're able to get Team Plasma out of the city. Cause that's how law enforcement usually handles things, right? If the perp gets away, don't worry. Just have some children go catch him instead. From my point of view, Team Plasma could wait until I talked to everyone in the city, and had done everything there was to do on Route 6. I battled the Heartbreaker and a bunch of scientists, and did some shopping, before heading into the cold storage area, which is just south of the city. There's no shortage of workers inside to help us level up before having to face the next gym. There's also no shortage of Team Plasma grunt battles as we find them huddled together in a shipping container. All of them challenge us to battles as they are defending Zinzolin, one of the 7 sages. After they're all defeated, Clay and the storage workers haul them off, meaning we're ready to go to the gym. However, before we can get in, we find that Getsis has appeared with an army of plasma grunts. He talks Clay into releasing the captives back to him, and Clay reluctantly agrees. They take off soon after, and Clay apologizes for having to let them go. He invites us in for our gym battle, but Sharon decides he wants to get a flawless victory against Clay, so he heads off to train some more. But we're pretty good on levels at this point, so we head inside. While the beginning of the game is pretty terrible about having to level grind before the gym leader, or having to risk being uncomfortably underleveled, beyond that first or second gym, the issue is pretty much fixed. While you might still experience some problems if you don't battle all of the trainers that are available, if you're training 3 or 4 Pokemon, you should have enough experience to not have to grind on Audino. 2 of my party members are considered to be trade Pokemon, therefore getting the experience bonus, and that makes even 5 Pokemon pretty manageable without wild battles. At least, this is the case for now. We'll see if that changes. The 5th gym is ground type with a decent amount of Krokorok and Excadrill, which makes fighting type valuable in addition to the typical grass and water. Naturally, Simisage and Keldeo have a rather easy time with Clay, and they secure us the 5th gym badge, which of course means it's time for another rival battle, this time with Bianca. She further cements herself as being the easier rival, still being lower level than the gym leader. However, she'd probably be able to beat this gym due to the type advantage. Bianca may not be quite as strong as the player or Sharon, but it's important that she doesn't let it affect how she feels about herself. And you can apply this to just about anything. I go to the gym and I can finally bench 135 for 7 or 8 reps, and I don't get discouraged by seeing this huge dude benching 225 with no spotter, because I reflect on my own experiences, and I've only been focused on lifting for about 5 months. And in that time, my strength has doubled or tripled on most lifts. And that's what's important for Bianca. She's not completely sure where the path she's walking right now will take her, but what she knows is that it's making her happy to be traveling with Pokemon. And if she's happy, why change what it is she's doing? Why try to be as good as the player or Sharon? That doesn't exactly matter. While she might not be quite as strong, that doesn't mean she's a bad trainer. That doesn't mean she's doing anything wrong. She's taking training at her own pace and doing what she wants to do. As Bianca leaves, she hands us the HM for Fly. To be honest, there's not too much of a need for it in this game. The region is pretty nicely designed and limits the amount of backtracking in the story. As we get to the end of Route 6, we're stopped by a huge spiderweb blocking the entrance to move forward through Chargestone Cave. Clay shows up to help us out with that, and gives us the TM for Bulldoze, presumably the move Krokorok uses to disarm it. And Clay leaves us with a beautiful quote: "If you think you can go, go wherever. And if you think you can do something, keep doing it." He leaves, and we enter the Chargestone Cave, only to be stopped by a different roadblock. And this time, it's N, along with members of the Shadow Triad, ninjas that force us to go to talk to N. In doing so, N informs us that we've been chosen. He told Getsis about our gang from New Vemetown, and he's been using the Shadow Triad to find out about us. Sharon pursues strength, Bianca pursues knowledge about herself, and then there's us, a neutral presence that Getsis wants to put to the test. So we're informed that Team Plasma waits for us ahead. N takes off, and as we pursue him, Bianca and Juniper appear to tell us about the Chargestone Cave. Juniper also gives us the Lucky Egg, which will provide bonus experience to help shorten any future level grinding we may have to do. And I may or may not have completely forgot about it for a while, but I didn't actually really feel like I needed it. So that's more of a positive thing. They are here to study Clink, which I imagine wouldn't be too hard for them. For us though, Chargestone Cave is going to be an absolute grind fest. For the most part, I haven't used repels at all in this playthrough, because that's how I used to play as a kid, but a little after Chargestone here, the switch was flipped in me. By the time I got to N, who's waiting for a battle at the end of the cave, my team wasn't looking so hot. Thankfully, I was equipped enough to beat him without having to heal. Keldeo takes down Boldore, Victini takes down Joltik and Clink, and Pignite takes out Ferroseed, hitting a big heat crash through paralysis. In this battle, we once again see that N has a completely different set of Pokemon from before, and perhaps by now we're able to infer why exactly this has been the case. He has some serious qualms about being a Pokemon trainer. He thinks trainers only serve to cause suffering for their Pokemon, while fulfilling their own selfish interests. So perhaps N constantly releases his Pokemon so as to not subject any one Pokemon to too much suffering, utilizing them to grow his strength as a trainer, but allowing them to roam free once they've helped him out enough. N wonders what it will take to be able to defeat us, pondering if it's just impossible for him to win whilst feeling bad about being a trainer. Interrupting these thoughts, Bianca and Juniper catch up with us, and are surprised to see us with another trainer. N, however, grows furious at the sight of the professor. As a professor, Juniper studies Pokemon as test subjects, divides them into arbitrary categories, and in his mind likely thinks that Juniper is perfectly fine if Pokemon suffer, as long as she gets to do her research. Juniper states that each individual should choose how they relate with Pokemon, but the thought of continuing to exist in a world where Pokemon are suffering by being trapped in a one-way relationship with their trainers causes N to sound off before walking away. Juniper is not too shaken about this debate, perhaps thinking that he's just an edgy teenager going through a phase, though if you look on Bulbapedia it says he's 20. Juniper heads back deeper into the cave to do some more research, with Bianca following her as her bodyguard. And with that, we can finally get out of the cave and go heal my Pokemon. Chargestone Cave is super long, and they tend to put doctors in these type of areas, but this time they figured a healing house at the entrance of the cave was enough, when it really wasn't. Anyway, time for Miss Stralton City, and would you look at that, I'm back from vacation. Definitely wish I did a little more recording on the road, but I got pretty distracted by California things, and a little bit of Minecraft when I got back. I went back into Chargestone Cave to take care of the rest of the normal trainers in there, and took a pit stop at the Move Relearner. Simisage still didn't have a good grass move because of how early I evolved it, but thankfully Simisage and Simipour get an 80 base power stab move they can relearn, and Simisear gets the short end of the stick with only 70 base power. Heading further into town, we get stopped by Cedric Juniper, the father of the Professor Juniper that we're familiar with, who upgrades our Pokedex to commemorate meeting him. Shortly after, the 6th gym leader, Skyla, joins the conversation. There's a bit of banter, Cedric leaves, then Skyla tells us she's heading to Celestial Tower to investigate what she thinks is a sick Pokemon. Pretty similar quest objective as another gym leader in the series. So, before we can challenge the gym, we'll have to chase after her. I took my time first, talking to all of the NPCs in the city, and taking on the trainers of Route 7, some of which will give us rotation battles, which is always neat to see, and in white version these would instead be triple battles. At the end of the route, we take a long climb up the Celestial Tower, made longer by the rather large amount of trainers inside, but thankfully there's a doctor this time, so we can heal up as we ascend. Once we reach the top, Skyla says there was an injured Pokemon, who she gave a max revive, making it healthy enough to fly away. The question is, what was this Pokemon? She doesn't elaborate on what type of Pokemon it was, perhaps because she's unfamiliar with the species. My gut tells me this had to have been an important plot point beyond just making us train more before the gym, but we never really hear anything about this in the future. Is it possible that this could have been Zekrom or Reshiram, whichever one N catches in your game? This is me just posturing. There's no evidence to support this being the case, but I would like to believe there was some bigger reason for us having to come out here. Skyla has us ring the bell before we leave, claiming it soothes the spirits of the Pokemon, and the sound that it makes reflects the spirit of those who ring it. She loves the sound, apparently gathering from it we're a kind and strong trainer. This makes her eager for us to have our gym battle, so she heads back to town, allowing us to enter the flying type gym. With 3 of my Pokemon being grass or fighting type, I'll be needing Victini and Pupitar to carry here. Update on skippable gym trainers, by the way. I'm pretty sure Gym 4 had 0 skippable trainers, but Gym 5 had a decent amount. Here in Gym 6, it looks like there's only 1 you can skip, which involves shooting the cannon to the wrong platform. That's not my only problem with this gym though. The bigger problem is, why the hell is this gym legal? We are shooting children out of cannons, making them crash into a wall at the end to face the gym leader. Everyone involved with the construction of this gym needs to be arrested right now. My strategy for this one was quite unconventional, but it definitely worked. I taught Victini Charge Beam to have coverage. And with Work Up and Flame Charge, I would have both attack stats boosted and a speed boost as well. Apparently this moveset is only possible on Victini, Mew, and Turtonator, who I completely forgot was even a Pokemon. Man, I gotta play Gen 7 soon. We collect our badge and head outside, only to find that N is low-key stalking us right now, just waiting for us to come out of the gym. Ladies, if a dude is standing outside of a gym, waiting for you in real life, run. N strikes up a conversation with our Victini. Pretty interesting for him to get a mythical Pokemon doing this. Victini tells N about us and our travels, and assures N that my Pokemon trust me completely. He's glad to hear this, saying that if everyone's relationship with their Pokemon was like the players, he wouldn't feel the need to liberate Pokemon from people at all. So we have to ask, why does N hold this perception of the relationship between people and Pokemon? The standard is Pokemon having a bond and a decent friendship with their trainers, and anything short of that would be abusive toward them, and other trainers would not be hesitant to call you out on it. We don't get an answer to why he thinks this for now, but N does give us the details of Team Plasma's current plans. Getsus and Team Plasma are looking for the stones of the legendary dragons, the Light Stone and the Dark Stone. They plan to have N be seen by one of the dragons as the new hero, who is worthy of fighting alongside them and becoming their friend. While he wants to have the power of the dragon by his side, he wants to change the world without using force if he can, as changing the world by force would just cause others to resist the change. He wants to win over the hearts of the people and make them want to release their Pokemon themselves, and acknowledges that making the player have to release their Pokemon would break his heart a little. But apparently, it's not enough for him to reconsider these plans that Team Plasma has. N leaves, and it's time for us to march forward. We balance on beams, clash with clowns, then come on, you think we're gonna get more than 2 gym fights without a Sharon battle? You're kidding yourself, friend. This time, all of his Pokemon will have held items. A scope lens on Super Luck Unpheasant, a citrus berry for Liepard, an elemental boost item for his monkey, and leftovers for his starter. His team is almost at full strength, with only his starter left that needs to be evolved. With evolutions to Unpheasant and his monkey, it's possible for this to be a battle you might struggle with, at least without a good pool of Pokemon you can work with. I took some damage, but no knockouts on my Pokemon. After the battle, we find out that Alder, the champion, was spectating. He says it was a fine Pokemon battle, though Sharon doesn't share the sentiment, because he lost. Alder is not pleased with this remark, but I'm quite surprised he doesn't scold him more than he does. Nobody likes a sore loser, and if you don't enjoy playing games unless you win, do you really even enjoy playing the game in the first place? Alder again asks what's next for him after becoming champion, and Sharon claims that for him currently, becoming the champion would validate his existence, and make him feel like he's really living. Alder doesn't question further, but argues what he does with his newfound power is more important than his goal of being the champion. And speaking of newfound power, Alder gives us the HM for Surf. That's something we haven't talked much about yet, because HMs are pretty limited in their use. Aside from the obvious surfing on the water routes and strength being needed for certain passages and bonus areas, you can tell they were kinda thinking, yeah, HMs kinda suck, don't they? But they kept them in the game because they weren't quite sure what to do about that just yet. Alder heads out, followed by Sharon, who states he will definitely win our fight next time. Getting the HM here reminded me that there were kids in one of the houses in Mistralton City, who told me to come back when I had the gym badge. Once you do, they tell you that they left some treasure at the end of the runway, and it's in the form of the Aerial Ace TM. A pretty memorable way to hand out a TM, unlike when Bianca gave us Fly, because I kinda forgot that happened and was hoping that it was the kids who had it. But after backtracking for that, we would be moving on to the next area, Twist Mountain. After all of Chargestone Cave, I had stocked up on repels, and decided I did not want to go through the entirety of Twist Mountain without repels, because that would have ended in one of 2 outcomes. I would have left at level 50, or would have exploded from the blood pressure increase it would cause, and I basically end up using repels from here on out. Once inside the mountain, Sharon and I run into a familiar face. Clay is around to inspect the mountain, and asks us about Team Plasma. He's been talking with the other gym leaders, and apparently they've been hiding out, waiting to make a move. Even though we did just encounter them before the last badge, and we probably should have told him about N telling us about their plans to get the Light and Dark Stone. So honestly, we probably could have had the gym leaders go looking for it and had it in our possession by the time we actually got to Dragon Spiral Tower. Man, this is a plot hole here. Clay hopes we have some fun exploring the mountain. And explore you can, because I was in here for about an hour or so with the repels. Granted, I'm pretty sure I was not 100% focused and was watching YouTube for a good amount of that, and I did take about a 5-minute break to pet Milo. He's so bub. But the mountain is a pretty big place with tons of trainers, so frequent trips to the doctor might be necessary. Once we get to the end of the cave system, we stop and see Sharon dealing with a Team Plasma grunt. It would seem as if they're ready to make some sort of move, saying they have obtained something they needed to gain the power to change the world. They take off, and Sharon says he's going to stick behind in the mountain for a bit, and he's going to reflect on what Alder had asked him about what he looks to do with his power, and why exactly it is he wants to become strong in the first place. Stepping outside, we're greeted with Icarus City, but also with Professor Cedric Juniper once again. He fills us in a little about Dragon Spiral Tower and says he's off to investigate a bit more about it. In this city there are some sights to see, including the Battle Grandma in the Pokemon Center, who has the TM for Brick Break. We can go up toward Dragon Spiral Tower and chat with Cedric some more, but we can't quite enter it just yet, so we'll have to settle for the gym. I'm not sure who decided to put an ice gym in the way of this team, but I'm not exactly complaining about it either, so I'll forgive the mostly mandatory trainer battles here. We'll just move past this gym by saying Bussers buffered that ice like it was in a hockey rink. Outside, we meet up with Sharon and Bianca. Sharon reflected with her on if he's changed since New Vematown, and Bianca is still searching for what it is she's trying to do. The leader Bryson rushes out of the gym, sensing a hidden presence outside. He was right, and the Shadow Triad was there, eavesdropping on the conversation of our trio. Getsus sent them to inform the player that we need to come to Dragon Spiral Tower, because N is there waiting for us. They take off, with Sharon and Bryson heading toward the tower in pursuit. Meanwhile, I took a break to do some dumbbell flies, doing my workout for the day at home. Not entirely sure why, but for some reason this break lasted several days. Must have fallen into the Minecraft abyss at the time. We travel to the tower exterior, and Cedric fills us in further about the tower's history. Bianca stays behind to guard him while we ascend the tower. About halfway through, we find Bryson and Sharon, dealing with enough Team Plasma members to make the climb for us manageable. Though that doesn't stop us from getting 4v1'd like we're on a different website. We make it to the top of the tower, and there stands Zekrom, with N by his side. With N's aim to change the world, he's headed for the Pokemon League to beat the champion. And if we hope to stop him, we'll need the power of Reshiram, the other dragon, to be able to fight N as an equal. Thus began the quest for the Lightstone. Outside, Alder shows up and has the idea to head to Relic Castle. Though this is kind of just fluffing things up, to be honest, because it's not there. Because Relic Castle is also pretty far back, this is the first time you really need Fly for anything. And in peak comedic fashion, I pull out my level 100 event Zekrom from my box to learn Fly. And yeah, this kind of breaks the whole plot in half. We go to Relic Castle, battle a bunch of grunts, and land in the basement. Getsus and Alder are here. And we really don't get a ton of info from this, other than about Alder's past. His partner was taken from him because of illness, and perhaps as his way of grieving, traveled the region to see all of what it had to offer. The main point of this, perhaps, is to set up Alder's return to the Pokemon League, where N is headed and aims to take him down. Getsus leaves the area and we head out shortly after, and once outside we get a call from Professor Juniper. She tells us to head to the Nakreen City Museum. The Junipers, Bianca, and Alder have already gathered around by the time we get there. Out of the gym comes Lenora, and as we confirm what it is we're looking for, we find that Lenora had it in the museum the whole time. She gives us the Lightstone, but we still foresee an issue. How the heck does this thing turn into a dragon? But of course the dragon-type gym leader might know something about that. So it's off to Opelucid City, home of the 8th gym, on the other side of Route 8 and 9 from us currently. Also included in Route 8, there is a secondary wooded area, and to my surprise, I was pulled into a special cutscene involving Keldeo when I entered. An old man appears, telling us he thinks Keldeo is looking for those who raised it, which would mean we need to bring the other 3 Swords of Justice here. I wasn't sure what this event was about, but this is the way to unlock Keldio's signature move, Secret Sword, the special attacking version of Sacred Sword, that still uses the physical defense stat of the opponent. For some reason, they felt the need to nerf it to 85 base power, and give it less power points than Sacred Sword, even in Gen 9 now. Anyway, the special event to get Sacred Sword is certainly neat, and along with it being here for this journey through the game, I've gained quite an adoration for Keldeo. Still doesn't quite top Victini, but it certainly bumps it up in the list of my favorite mythical Pokemon. According to the mystery gift to receive this one, it was originally intended for us to use this on our playthrough in Black and White 2, so we're almost getting the intended experience with it. Sadly, it seems we aren't going to get a legit shiny for it though, because it got an event in the Sword and Shield DLC where they shiny locked it. Game Freak, please, let us shiny hunt, man. So we continue through Route 8, at the end of which we have a battle with Bianca. And wait, what? I lost to Bianca? Surely not. Don't tell me it's true. But this is indeed what happened. If you choose Tepig, and it's raining on this route, it's quite possible for Bianca to set up a sweep on you. Superior gets Coil, raising its attack and defense, which she can use before using her full restores, and with Superior's naturally good speed, it can become quite a problem. The sad thing is if I was one level higher with Emboar, I would have won the fight. But instead, I reset my game because I didn't want to actually lose the battle, meaning I got to waste about an hour of my time getting back to this point, because I hadn't saved since before getting the Lightstone. Truly unfortunate. The second time around, I used Tino enough to get him to level 41, where Victini learns Flame Burst, allowing us to take down Superior with special attacks instead, and defeating Bianca for the final time in the main story. It would be nice if at this stage in the franchise we'd be allowed to lose the battle without consequence, because this would actually make for a really compelling redemption arc for Bianca as a serious trainer, even though she only won because of the damn weather. But I loved this part of rival fights against Nemona in Gen 9. You're not forced to win to progress the story. In fact, it can even enhance the experience to lose these fights, building up tension for when you get the last laugh against her. Bianca hands us a full restore and pleads with us to stop Team Plasma. Venturing forward, we run through the Two Blind Bridge, a less iconic bridge scene. While the graphics here are pretty good, the scenery is too drab for it to be iconic like the Sky Arrow Bridge. Though perhaps the mood is fitting, because Ghetsis is at the end of this one, and we wouldn't want his presence to ruin a beautiful scene, now would we? He congratulates us on acquiring the Lightstone, but tells us it's all in vain, as he's groomed N from when he was a child to become the hero of legend. But the cracks in Ghetsis' purity of purpose become more evident. He claims only Team Plasma will be allowed to use Pokemon once N is the victor. But would the people allow for such hypocrisy? Would they not have to deal with later insurgencies because they are trying to rule Unova with an iron fist? If you can piece these things together, you'll feel bad for N, as some serious manipulation would have been needed for him to not see these cracks in Ghetsis' intentions. And it makes us all the more determined to stop Ghetsis and try to save N. Forward we go onto Route 9, and would you look at that, we can get around all of the trainers and get to Opelucid City to heal if needed. Before we can though, inside the city, Ghetsis holds another speech. He asks everyone to free their Pokemon, to release them from the oppression of their trainers, as Pokemon are living beings with unknown potential we aren't letting them reach to realize their true greatness. This causes some of the residents of the city to become unsure if people should keep Pokemon, while there are two hanging back that acknowledge Pokemon still have an amount of free will, even if they are captured in a Pokeball. If we think of the typical Pokemon that are hard for us to catch, mainly the legendaries, these Pokemon seek to test the strength of the trainer challenging them, and if they are caught in the Pokeball, they gain respect for their trainer, acknowledging they were strong enough to be able to hold their ground with the legendary in battle and capture them. And while they might not view us as a friend at first, they still respect us as a trainer and are willing to listen to us in battle. Since this happens to even the most headstrong of Pokemon, we can assume this trickles down to other Pokemon to some degree, and that any Pokemon that truly doesn't want to be in captivity would flee from battle in the first place. Or even if they wanted to flee, if the trainer was somehow able to prevent them from fleeing with the right party setup, perhaps the Pokemon would be swayed by the intelligence of the trainer, such that it would be okay with following them from then on. This is just speculation, but I imagine it's not entirely too far off from what happens with these phenomenon we see in the franchise. We recognize one of these individuals hanging behind after the speech as Iris, who in turn recognizes us. They also recognize Alder as the Unova region champion, though the older gentleman, Drayden, doesn't seem too thrilled about Alder's leave of absence. Fun fact, if you have Hassel meet Drayton in the Indigo Disc, you'll learn that Drayden here is Drayton's grandfather. Quite fitting. We're hoping one of them knows how to get our Dragon-type Pokemon to transform from the Lightstone, but they aren't quite sure about that either. However, they offer to fill us in further about the legend of the dragon. But first I had to run back to Route 9 to battle all the trainers and speak with everyone in the city, where we have a couple battles in the Battle House. When I finally end up going, I learn that Reshiram and Zekrom were once the same Pokemon, who split in two over an argument about truths and ideals. They battled one another with a pair of humans, one who sought ideals and the other truth. In the end, they declared neither side is entirely right or wrong, ending the fight, but the battle started again, which ended in the destruction of the Unova region. If we reflect on our current situation at hand, N is being blinded by the path of ideals, but only because Getsis made sure he was unaware of the truth at hand, where the majority of Pokemon and trainers mutually respect one another, and the Pokemon aren't actually suffering. And the irony we've been seeing the whole time is that Team Plasma is the main source of Pokemon suffering in the Unova region at the moment. After telling us some finer details about the legendary dragons and doing their own reflecting on it, we refocus on the quest to stop N and Team Plasma. And for me to face off with the Elite Four, I'm going to need my 8th gym badge. And oh boy, does this gym suck. There are so many things wrong with this gym from a design perspective. Number 1, it has the illusion of being non-linear, but it is actually linear. Number 2, forced battles. Forced battles everywhere. Number 3, the paths are unnecessarily long for, again, being linear. And number 4 is Pokemon diversity. All of the trainers only have Haxorus or Druddigon. There's probably something else I'm forgetting, and honestly, in a vacuum, none of these would be a problem on their own, but all of them together, it was just annoying. I needed to heal before the gym leader fight itself, but you pretty much have to go all the way to the end of the gym to be able to leave. I got so frustrated at this gym design, I needed to take a break after. And this is a casual playthrough. Couldn't imagine if this was a Nuzlocke. Though I would probably make sure to have an ice type for it. I still beat the gym first try, but I was just further annoyed that the strategy I tried to use failed, because I ignored that Haxorus would have assurance for Victini, which did put me at risk for a Dragon Dance sweep. But we'd get the 8th gym badge, then I'd take a few hours off to forget about the injustice that is this gym. All that's left for us now is to head to the Elite Four, which means we'll need to take the trip through Victory Road. To do so, we'll need to head north onto Route 10. We can fight some trainer battles here before getting stopped by Sharon and Bianca toward the end. We are heading for the Pokemon League, and since Alder has returned, Sharon believes things will be alright. But thinking practically, he wants to test us himself to know that we'll be able to handle the worst case scenario, where N is able to beat the champion and we're facing off against Team Plasma. This being our final main story battle with Sharon. And fittingly, it's a tough battle, being a couple levels stronger than Drayden, and potentially even stronger than the player. But since there's no freak weather event that can make my grass type moves weaker, we can take him down. He's thankful that we're strong as ever and heals up our Pokemon. I didn't really acknowledge it at the time, but this is a bit of a bittersweet moment. The last time the Nuvema Town trio is all together before the story's finale. Sharon concedes that being unable to compete with us would likely render him unable to compete with N, but offers if he can do anything else to help, he will. And Bianca doesn't think she's strong enough to help in a battle of her own, but she offers us some max revives to potentially help us out in our fight with N. An extremely thoughtful gesture on her part. Our trio reflects on how everyone became so different on this journey. Even though we all walked the same road and all faced off against the same opponents in the gym leaders, we all learned that our abilities of what we can do and the things we want to do in life are vastly different. In real life, everyone who comes from the same neighborhood and goes to the same school aren't all going to end up in the same jobs, and they won't get married and have kids all at the same time. We're all different, and we should do the things we like to do, and do the things that we're good at, and we should do the things that make us happy. Sharon now has a new motivation for getting stronger, to be able to help out the player or Alder if things go south, so he's off to continue his training. Bianca says she'll do her best to help out if she can, and tries to inspire us, but all she comes up with is best foot forward. Kinda falls flat if you ask me, but we can appreciate the effort on Bianca's part. There's a secondary path and a few more optional trainers on Route 10 we can battle before we're faced with the entrance to Victory Road, in front of which stands 8 gates that we must pass through, each one needing one of the 8 badges to unlock it. Presumably this is a way to curb sequence breaking, and it seems it was effective, as the any % speedrun still needs to get all the badges, though this game is a lot less broken than the previous entries in the series to begin with. Each gate attendant tells us to halt so they can check for our badge. Upon seeing it, they open the gate and give us some inspirational words related to that badge's name or type, with a very solid line at the end.
O holder of the Legend Badge, pass through Victory Road, which lies beyond here, and head for the Pokemon League. Prove that you too can be a legend.
This line before the climax at the end of a long journey is just so nice. And with that, we enter Victory Road. This Victory Road is a cave system traveling upwards. I like it when they're in this style. It's a decent environmental metaphor. It's a long journey to the top of the Elite Four and the Pokemon League. And it's a long journey to the top of any skill in life, including Pokemon battling. With battling just about everyone I could, it took around 45 minutes to reach the end. But there's a bit of a snag here. All of my Pokemon were still under-leveled for fighting even the Elite Four members, much less the battles that follow. To be comfortable for that, we probably want to enter the league at around level 50 at the least, but if you were doing a level cap without rare candies, you might even go to level 54, which is the highest level of Pokemon you'll be fighting within. Unfortunately, what this means is we have a lot of grinding to do, and it's made even longer by the unfortunate positioning of grass that we have. Route 10, or the Victory Road Gate, is the furthest patch of grass we can reach, regrettably having Audino between levels 33 to 36 as the best we can fight before the Elite Four. Because it's Audino, it's still fine experience-wise, but it's not ideal, as we should be fighting stuff that's at least level 40, and because of the number of Pokemon in my party, and wanting to get them all to level 52, it took about 3.5 hours to train up everything, as well as taking care of some bonus content. Because I won't need any HMs in the Elite Four building itself, I decided to get rid of Palkia, replacing it with who else but the mythical Meloetta, casually having 3 of the 4 mythical Pokemon of the generation for the Elite Four. Just your average Pokemon playthrough. I wanted to have the ability to change Meloetta's form, which is done with the signature move, Relic Song. And you wouldn't know unless you had to get the move, but as with Keldeo, there's an event to get a Relic Song. It's in the Castelia City Cafe in the back alley. Talking to the guitarist will have them play an old song, and Meloetta comes out of the ball to sing and dance, having her remember her signature move. These moments with Keldeo and Meloetta are so unbelievably cool, and it's sad to see that we've gone from mythical Pokemon getting incredibly special treatment like this to the point where I'd imagine most people watching this didn't know this was a thing. And we contrast that with today, where newer mythical Pokemon just sort of come into existence. The only thing notable about said Pokemon is that they have good stats, and are rare by the nature of them only being available in boring special events, through either online distribution or a local store giving out serial codes. It's nice that there seems to be a bit of a return to form with Pecharunt though, as well as if we think about PLA, basically every legendary in that region got special treatment. But with everyone trained up and all moves I needed properly learned, it was time for the Elite Four. This Elite Four is different from prior generations. You're able to take on the different members in whatever order you want. This is an incredible change that allows for some more diverse strategizing when taking them on, but it's a bit of a shame they didn't keep this option in present games. They did for the Blueberry Elite Four in the Indigo Disc, but not for the base game of Scarlet and Violet. I'm a bit basic anyway though, so I just went from left to right. This starts with Chantal, on which Meloetta can set up on Cofagrigus and absolutely body, followed by Grimsley, who gets destroyed by Swords Dance Keldeo. Then Caitlyn, Work Up and Shadow Ball from Tino Works, and finally Marshall, who I was committed to using Meloetta on, healing several times because who knows what past me was thinking. And this is it, the moment of truth. In any other Pokemon game, this is when we'd be face to face with the champion. However, N has made it here before us, and unfortunately for us, has defeated Alder. N is happy that Zekrom has provided him the power to spread his ideals, and will decree for trainers to release their Pokemon. Alder pleads with N, but having lost, N will not listen to him. This is when he realizes the player, the other hero, has arrived, and wants to pit the legendary dragons against one another. But not here. because somehow N pulls an entire castle out of his ass from the area surrounding the Pokemon League. So many questions can be raised about how this would even be possible without at least 10 Groudons helping, but for the sake of staying focused, we'll move on. N tells us to enter the castle, that everything will be decided there. Sharon arrives and sticks by Alder, the two of them insisting that we show N that nothing good can come from the separation of people and Pokemon. And knowing our mission, we step inside the castle. Before we can get anywhere, the 7 sages, minus Getsis, are waiting for us at the entrance, and they're trying to defy any direct orders they may have from N or Getsis, and wish to take us out themselves, to ensure that N is victorious on the day and the plans of Team Plasma are realized. But luckily for us, Bianca came through. She was able to summon all of the gym leaders who show up to take down the sages for us. Now, if there's one thing I had to critique about the Team Plasma storyline, it'd be these guys. They're supposed to be rather important here, yet we never end up fighting any of them. Aside from the ones we meet in the sequels, the rest of them are completely forgettable characters. Of course, taking all 6 of them on right now would have been out of the question, so we'll take the help of the gym leaders and proceed to explore Team Plasma's castle. The castle is huge, having multiple banquet hall-sized rooms housing members of Team Plasma, and has a special room we can visit, a room belonging to N, where he was raised. Upon entering, we find what looks to be a child's room through and through. A toy train set going around a track, bins of toys laying around, the oddly decorated walls and floors, and what's probably the result of his recent teenage years, a basketball net and a half-pipe for skateboarding. Just one look at this room fills you with pity for N. You get an uneasy feeling as you realize N was truly raised to be a psychopath. The final room of the castle is the King's Room, where N awaits our arrival. Before we can enter, Getsis walks out of it, so overjoyed that his plans are finally coming to fruition that he can't help but share his true plan with us. He intends to have Team Plasma rule the world, with only them being allowed to train and use Pokemon. And of course doesn't know this part of the plan, because he would likely be against anyone retaining Pokemon. He wants to fully separate people and Pokemon, so they can regain their original power. As we walk in, he says such, and challenges us to show our determination to keep people and Pokemon together. We walk up to each other, face to face. He remarks how we might have the Lightstone, but the dragon has not recognized us as its hero. He believes we're no match for him without our dragon, summoning his own, making a grand entrance, blasting through the wall of the castle, activating the generator in its tail, preparing for battle. Before a battle can begin, however, the stone inside of our bag begins trembling, drawing in power from our surroundings, then releases its stored energy, bringing forth our Dragon of Legend. Our dragon wishes to battle with us, to test our strength, but also to test if we are really pursuing truth, which would no doubt require a long, grueling battle, a back-and-forth slugfest that, yeah, I just threw a quick ball. First try, too. This is when they started giving the main legendaries at least a 45 catch rate, making it quite a bit easier to catch them, which I'm definitely on board with, because if you're dead set on catching something, you're going to be resetting over and over again anyway until you get it, and all you're really doing is just waiting to get lucky enough. And there's no tangible real benefit for a Pokemon to have an annoyingly low catch rate. Maybe there's some idealized benefit, but we're talking about the truth here. See what I did there? After catching it, you have the option to have your dragon replace a Pokemon in your party. It only feels like the right way to end the story in my opinion. And from the look of my party, I kinda needed it typing wise, so I made the smartest decision of sending my grass type back into the box. So I'm rocking 3 fire types now. Guess my character would be a fire type gym leader after this journey. N is thankful the dragon has chosen us as its hero, and gives us the courtesy of healing our Pokemon. And now it's finally time for us to put our beliefs on the line in the final battle with N. He sends out Zekrom while we send out Reshiram. Our dragon is forced to the front of our party if we choose to put it in our party. A nice move for the story. These dragons are heavily designed to be equals, yin and yang, 2 parts of the same being. Each has 90 speed, 100 HP, and 100 in their non-dominant defense, with Reshiram being special dominant and Zekrom being physical dominant. But they're still decent in their other attacking stat. It seems N only wants to use the signature move of his dragon, but Dragon Breath is just the better move. Even with N's dragon having the level advantage, Reshiram is able to take it down in just 2 hits. And with Zekrom down, I send in Keldeo, who just Swords Dance sweeps through the entire rest of his team. It's actually the perfect counter for everything but his dragon. And in this fashion, the battle of truths versus ideals comes to an end. The dust settles. Our truth, our conviction, was stronger than N's, granting us victory in this battle. N ponders if truths and ideals are both right somehow, after all, and comes to understand that accepting other ideas rather than rejecting them is the true way to change the world. N's original standpoint isn't completely wrong. Some people should not have Pokemon, especially when those people cause suffering for those Pokemon. But when initially presented to him, he didn't accept the new idea that people and Pokemon can coexist together, without it being a one-way relationship, without the person causing the Pokemon to suffer. He figured that we were just an exception to the rule, because his prior worldview didn't have him experience a relationship like this between Pokemon and their trainers. If he had accepted this idea as a possibility sooner, well, he probably would have taken a different path, and the plot of the story wouldn't have been quite as good. As N continues to think things over, Getsus enters the frame, completely outraged over N's loss to us, an ordinary trainer. He snaps. He calls N a warped, defective boy who knows nothing other than Pokemon. Even still, he still plans for N to be the king of Team Plasma, as he still holds the power to win over the hearts of the people. But for his plans to still work, for him to still be able to rule the world, he'll now need to get rid of us, because we know the truth. That all along, Getsus didn't care for the liberation of Pokemon at all. All he cared about was him being able to rule the world. And all I care about is how terrible his battle music is. The final battle before the credits, and the music isn't a banger. Sad times we live in. His Bouffalante ended up being the final boss for some reason, as it lived a -4 defense sacred sword from Keldeo somehow. But using items is OP, so we still win. And Getsus can't believe it. He was supposed to be the perfect ruler of the perfect new world. Light Yagami vibes. Alder asks N if he still believes in his cause, and Getsus simply laughs at how messed up he caused N to be. His whole worldview being shattered, N doesn't know what to think, or what to do next. Alder tells him that there are 2 sides to any argument, and that neither side necessarily has all of the answers. Getsus gets hauled off by Alder and Sharon, as N wants to talk to us one last time.
I want to talk to you about something. It's about when I first met you in Accumula Town. I was shocked when I heard what your Pokemon was saying. I was shocked because that Pokemon said it liked you. It said it wanted to be with you. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't believe that there were Pokemon that liked people. Because up until that moment, I'd never known a Pokemon like that. The longer my journey continued, the more unsure I became. All I kept meeting were Pokemon and people who communicated with one another and helped one another. That's why I needed to confirm my beliefs by battling with you. I wanted to confront you, hero to hero. I needed that more than anything. There's no way a person like me, someone who understands only Pokemon. No, actually, I didn't understand them either. No way I could measure up to you, when you had met so many Pokemon and were surrounded by friends. The champion has forgiven me, and what I should do now is something I'll have to decide for myself. Trails. You said that you have a dream. That dream, make it come true. Make your wonderful dream a reality, and it will become your truth. Trails, if anyone can, it's you. Well then, farewell.
And that is the story of Pokemon Black and White. Holy shit, what a story. It had been a long time since I had played this game, and that should be a crime punishable by death penalty. The writing was phenomenal. The life lessons inside were real and relatable. A complex narrative for the evil team and the protagonist alike. The overall ambition this title has is honestly refreshing in 2024, where most game releases are incredibly safe and would never delve into these type of topics. And come on, do you think Pokemon would dare make a game that Pikachu isn't available in now? I would go so far as to rate the game overall a 9.8 out of 10. This is without getting into the competitive Pokemon aspect at this point in the franchise, and without going too deep into the post-game of this title at least. I do of course have some gripes about the game. I don't personally enjoy the finished look of the graphics 100% of the time. Some of the gyms weren't designed so great, and there were issues with the pace of progression at certain points, especially at the end of the game, where I needed a 3.5 hour grinding session. Sometimes the pace was too fast, sometimes entirely too slow. But at the end of the day, this is an incredibly solid entry into the Pokemon franchise, and I dare say the best Pokemon story of all time. So that's the end of the first part of this video, and my goodness, we're on page 44 of the script. I'd like to once again invite you to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and if you really enjoy my content and have the means, consider supporting the channel. You can do so right here on YouTube with memberships, or if you don't want to add another monthly subscription cost to worry about, there's super thanks as well. You can also support me on Twitch, and I've decided to add major Twitch supporters into the video thanks as well. Any additional support from you guys is greatly appreciated, especially because I have to pay for health insurance now. Like, I don't get it. Does it come with a monthly mental health BJ? Why is this the monthly fee? In recent years, you've no doubt noticed that it's becoming more common for fans to claim Gen 5 as their favorite generation. I took a poll recently in the community tab on if we could only have Emerald, Platinum, Black and White 2, or the Ultra games, which one would you choose? And with over 12,000 votes, Black and White 2 was the winner. It actually wasn't at first though, it took quite some time for it to overtake everything. But are the sequels really that good? Well, looks like it's time to write another 44 pages. But I am going to have to sour things a bit here before we get into it. I feel the need to apologize because there basically is no story or good character development to analyze until like the 6th or 7th badge. So if the beginning of this Black and White 2 section feels boring, that's because it is. The only really exciting things we see early on are the characters from the previous games, seeing how they've changed in the past 2 years. Let me reiterate that I actually played White 2 first, as the video was originally intended to only be about the sequels. I had only played Black 2 a couple years ago maybe, and I was on emulator using a bunch of speed up and not really caring about the story. But this time would be different, as with Black we'll be talking to every NPC, battling almost every available trainer, and never running from a Pokemon battle. You'll also see a little Arceus resetting on the side here at first, cause that's when I started working on this video. 2 months ago now. We boot up the game and once again get the classic Professor cutscene with Juniper, but this time her Minccino evolved. A subtle detail, but a precursor to the entire state of the Unova region. We choose the boy character this time, and are also presented with something different from the originals, the option to name our rival, who we notice is a completely different person. With the rest of the scene, we find Juniper once again wants to send some kids on a Pokemon journey, finding out why that is soon. And after some words of wisdom, it's time to jump into the world of Pokemon once again. We get an opening title cinematic of some particles flying around the town overhead, coming to a stop at our house, where our mother is standing outside. She gets a phone call from Professor Juniper, which I don't know if it was said in the first games, but we find out her first name is Aurea. She tells our mom she'd like to give us a Pokedex and send us off on a journey, which our mother thinks is a wonderful idea, though she didn't wait to hear an answer before sending an assistant out with what we would need to begin the journey, an assistant named Bianca. They get off the phone and our mom goes inside. She fills us in about the details of the phone call she just had, along the way asking us the most important questions of, do you want a Pokemon? And do you want a Pokedex? We say yes, and our mom lets us know that Bianca is here to give us a Pokemon, so we can head outside to look for her. Just outside her house, we get stopped by our rival. His canonical name is Hugh, but I named him Steve after my friend, so if I say Steve, know I'm referring to the rival. He asks us if we've got a Pokemon yet, and we fill him in with the exciting news. His little sister tells us if we're getting a Pokemon, to take real good care of it. Steve's eager for us to get our Pokemon, so he tags along, and he's in for a ride on this playthrough. as I take him around to all of the NPCs in the city that I can, and even try to go outside of the city before we make our way to the Aspertia City Outlook, according to Steve, the city's most famous spot. And it makes sense, a scenic view of the woodlands and a small pond, giving the feeling Aspertia would be a good place to come to get closer to nature while still having a city life. Bianca marvels at the view. Then, after introducing ourselves, it's time for us to select our starter, this time taking the correct choice, Snivy. We name our starter and get the Pokedex from Bianca. As we go to leave, Steve is excited to see our Pokemon and asks what the Pokedex is. Upon finding out, he asks Bianca if she could give him one too. In his mind, learning more about Pokemon would lead to him getting stronger, which he needs to do to be able to search for something very important. Bianca isn't quite sure what to make of the reasoning, but is happy to say yes, as she conveniently has another Pokedex with her. We learn an important detail as to why we're being recruited, and it's that the distribution of Pokemon is quite different from what it was 2 years ago. To find out why that is, we'll need to study Pokemon with the Pokedex, so our mission is clear. Before proceeding further, Bianca suggests Steve and I have a Pokemon battle, since we both have a Pokedex and a Pokemon now. Steve alluded to the fact he has a Pokemon earlier, but now we know for sure. He raised his own Pokemon from an egg, and it's conveniently whichever starter that our choice is weak to. So we have a battle with Steve's Tepig, who is a cheater, getting a crit on the first turn. Though after one more tackle, he proceeds to only use Tail Whip, but I'm pretty sure this one isn't scripted for you to win. But thankfully I do, giving us quite a bit of experience. This apparently gave Steve his first experience with a trainer battle, and he's glad he can count on us to be able to win. With that, he's off to start on his journey, and tells us to get stronger. This might remind us of Sharon a bit from the first Gen 5 games, but there's already a major difference. Steve, or Hugh, already has an end goal in mind as to why he needs to get stronger, beyond just trying to gain strength to become the champion, because he has something he needs to search for. With a rough first battle behind us, Bianca suggests we head to the Pokemon Center, as that's where you go to heal your injured Pokemon. We head inside, and just as Professor Juniper showed her 2 years ago, she shows us the most important bits of the Pokemon Center: the healing station, the PC, and the Pokemart, where you can purchase Pokeballs. And she wants to show us how to use Pokeballs, and for that, we'll need to follow her outside. But we're stopped by our mom and Steve's sister. Mom gives us the running shoes, and Steve's sister gives us a couple of town maps. One for us, and one for Steve, who seems to have run off without saying bye to his family. Kinda similar to the Gen 4 rival. It fills Bianca with joy to see us getting going away presents, and she's eager to get us started on our Pokedex filling journey. After getting one last going away present from the gate attendant, we step out on Route 19 to meet Bianca. She reminisces about the day she set off on her journey, how this reminded her of Route 1, and she gives us a catching tutorial, after which she tells us to head east to Flockacy Town in search of Steve. But he can wait, I'm catching Pokemon out here. I just started catching whatever I could find, expecting to keep rotating the Pokemon in and out of my party for the time being. Before I can reach the end of the route, I'm stopped by a strange man standing on a cliff. He introduces himself, and it happens to be Alder. It seems the quarrels with Team Plasma a couple years ago has inspired him. Something he enjoys now is telling young trainers about how wonderful it is to walk toward the future together with Pokemon. Then he jumps off of the cliff and asks about ourselves. Upon telling him he checks us out, yo? Alder need to be investigated here. He offers to train us up a little if we follow him, and doing so puts us in Flockacy Town. We can see some remnants of construction in the town, which makes sense as this area of the map didn't exist in the original games. Catching up with Alder, he notices we have 2 town maps, and lets us go on ahead to Route 20 to catch up with Steve. It's here that we're faced with our first random trainer battles, of course with the same old Purloin and Patrat that we've been battling in the grass so far. After a few trainers, we run into a hiker, preventing us from getting past until we have ourselves a gym badge, getting us to follow the path to the left, which leads us to Flockacy Ranch. As we'll soon learn, the grass here is loaded with a ton of different Pokemon. I caught an Azurill and named it Michaela. This Azurill actually had the rare transgender glitch happen, going female to male upon evolving. I caught a few other Pokemon before moving forward and finding Steve at the ranch. He's glad we've come out to toughen up and wants to see how strong we are now. And what's the first thing he does? Crit me again. Once I needed to heal though, he once again just used a Tail Whip from there. Maybe this is just his inexperience as a trainer showing. After the battle, we give him the map, and the owners of the ranch come by, sensing the excitement. The owner asks us if we've seen a Herdier around, because he hasn't been able to find it. Steve flips out on him, saying that Herdier could be lost forever, and the ranch owner should be more careful. Then runs off looking for it, asking us to help. The owner's not too worried, but his wife offers to heal up our Pokemon if they get hurt while looking for it. I decided to train and catch some more of the Pokemon, wanting to get a Riolu here, a rare encounter. And holy shit, this was some of the worst luck I ever had. After 45 minutes of searching and training Pokemon, I gave up because I still didn't find one, and decided to advance the story. Steve went ahead looking, and we battle a few trainers scattered about the ranch. And at the end of a long, winding grass path, we eventually find Herdier. However, it's not alone. Standing with it is an edgy-looking character, and he starts yapping about a group he represents, Team Plasma. I told him I never heard of it. Heh, aren't I funny? He tells us they tried to conquer Unova around 2 years ago, but not much else. Frustrated that he got lost chasing this Herdier, and frustrated that we caught him, he throws something at us, which is the TM for frustration, using it as a chance to get away after startling us with it. Steve brings over the ranch owner, and he thanks us for our help. Not even being aware that a Team Plasma member was here trying to steal it, Steve still freaks out on him for how calm he's being about the situation, and tells him to take better care of his Pokemon. The owner plants the seed for us that perhaps something happened to Steve before our story began, as it seems like he's very afraid of losing Pokemon. This concludes our questing at the ranch, so we return to town and speak with Alder. He can tell that I'm battle-scarred from my search for Riolu and that I've grown as a trainer, so instead of training me himself, he asks us to battle a couple of his students. These students have elemental monkeys, the one weak to us and the one strong against us, effectively training us on what the first gym of the previous games did. With our lesson learned, we head outside, where a creepy old man is waiting for us. Before we can object to it, he hands us a metal box. This is Mr. Metal, and he informs us the Metal Rally office is going to be meticulously watching every move we make forever and ever. Well, that sounds riveting and not creepy at all. For completing various tasks around the region, the Metal office will give us a medal, and they want it to be our goal to collect them all. But I saw the Johnstone video. I think I'm good for now. Alder comes back out to tell us about a new gym leader that has arrived in Aspertia City, and on our way back, he stops to teach us about held items, such as the Oranberry. As some final remarks, he urges us to train up our Pokemon and get stronger. As the stronger our Pokemon get, the more our horizons will broaden, which seems to kinda conflict Alder's viewpoints from the previous game. Back in Aspertia City, we can enter the Trainer's School, which contains the Pokemon Gym. Once inside, we learn this will be a normal type gym, and if we played the originals, we recognize our esteemed gym leader to be Sharon. Since the gym just now opened, there wasn't much time to make an elaborate puzzle or win condition, so Sharon just wants us to defeat his two trainers before we're able to face him. Easy normal type Pokemon, not too big of a deal. But against our fight with Sharon, I started to see a bit of a trend here.
Everyone wants to crit me.
This game does not like me. The 3 most important battles of the game so far, and I've been crit on all of them. At least I was in Overgrow range, which cancelled out the potion he used. Which, wait, scriptwriter me just realized. Sharon now uses bag items instead of held items. That's a crazy subtle change that approximately 0 people have ever realized. I guess a lot does change in 2 years' time, and this is one of the main themes we'll see throughout the game. The game really banks on you remembering the events of Black and White 1. A phenomenon we'll explore. We get the badge, and once again are graced with Workup being the first gym's TM. Absolutely overpowered. Not only that, but Bianca shows up as we go to leave, and she gives us the TM for return. It makes sense because we got frustration too, but this is one of the best normal type moves in the entire game, given to you right after the first badge. I guess they really wanted you to use TMs in this game. Sharon follows after us and is happy to see Bianca. They apparently haven't seen each other in these 2 years. The two of them put theirs and Juniper's info into our cross-transceiver, and right on cue, Juniper starts up a call with the 4 of us. They're really hoping you played the original games for some bonus nostalgia, with this scene supposed to remind you of your calls with this group. They all catch up in the current happenings, and Juniper emphasizes to us the importance of enjoying our journey alongside Pokemon. Steve appears, eager to challenge the new gym leader, and Bianca wraps things up by giving us the Sea Gear. Why they felt the need to wait until after the first badge, I don't know. Bianca lets us know the next gym is going to be in Verbank City, which is just past Flockacy Town, so that's where we'll be heading next. On the way, Bianca stops stops us again to give us the habitat list feature of the Pokedex. Before advancing further though, I head back to the ranch to train up a Mareep for a good 15 minutes, and am graced with the presence of Dunsparce, a rare Shaking Grass spawn in the ranch. Shaking Grass is unlocked right away in this game, by the way, not requiring the first badge this time. But I was training on regular grass Pokemon because I wasn't aware just yet of how good Audino was. I decided Dunsparce would be a fantastic addition to the team, and that I would be ready to move on. Once we come back with the badge, the hiker wants to double check that we're ready for the path ahead, challenging us to a battle. And this man rubs it in my face. The one Pokemon he has is a Riolu. This was a personal attack. After defeating him, we gain access to the rest of the route, which contains the double battle grass, clocking in at 10 levels higher than normal grass of this route, a decent place to train up before entering the city. But needing to heal up every now and then, I'd find myself back at the ranch, which only reignited my desire to find a Riolu for the team. After another 25 minutes in the ranch, I finally found a Pidove, which I also hadn't found to that point, and finally a Riolu. So it took about 90 minutes to 2 hours of searching in this grass. Keep in mind though that I'm not running and animations are on. I had more unlikely events happen in the meantime, like finding 3 Mareep in a row, further making me think that this game hated me. I trained up a bit more, the team now being pretty much set. Eager to progress, I finished up the route and head in to Furbank City. Our mom calls, asking about our progress. Thankful we're out exploring. Heading toward the Pokemon Center, we see a musician and a ship captain arguing. The captain has dreams of being an actor and is off to Pokestar Studios. But as a ship captain, they're supposed to be driving the ship and therefore causing problems for people who want to be on said ship, which would take everyone to the main part of Unova. Frustrated, Roxy, the musician, heads to the Pokemon gym, where she is the gym leader. But before I go there, I need to do quite a bit of training. And because I had not yet discovered Audino still, I spent like 2 hours training up the entire squad in the double grass outside, when I should have been trying to kill Audino in the Furbank complex. But when I was finally high enough level to take on the trainers there, I did find a Shaking Grass patch and gain a full level from Audino. And shortly after, I would confirm that this is indeed the fastest way to level in these games. And good thing I did, because I still spent a good 45 minutes training with Audino before going to the gym. Everyone was level 18 to match Roxy. This time I would be sporting a full team of 6 Pokemon, so training before the gym is going to be pretty common. I wasn't really paying attention to if you could skip the gym trainers here or not, but since there's only 2 other trainers in the gym in both of the first 2 gyms, I'd say it's not a big deal if you can't. This gym is the one downside to choosing Snivy. Being poison type, you'll want to train up at least 1 other Pokemon to deal with it easier. I used a Pidove, but basically any other Pokemon besides Snivy at this point should work. We may have gotten this badge, but before we're able to take on the next gym, we'll need to get to mainland Unova, which means we'll have to find the captain in Pokestar Studios. This is probably the most, if not it's in the top 3, most complain about side activities in the entire Pokemon franchise, and it's for good reason. Just listen to this.
This is our boss, Mr. Studio.
This is a new side area in Black and White 2 where you create movies with Pokemon battling, so you can become a movie star. And that'd be cool and fine, if it weren't for them forcing you to make a movie before progressing the story. If you're reading everything, this is like a 15-minute tangent, and add on another 10 minutes if you want to talk to all of the NPCs around. If you're just mashing through the story part, it's maybe 5 to 10 minutes, but this is a pretty long section where you don't get to train your Pokemon, don't get to explore the region, and you have to watch the same movie script twice. At least after watching it the first time, the captain returns to his duties on the ship. But man, this is one of the most dreaded parts of any playthrough of these games. I barely remembered anything from my first time playing, but this part was one such memory. Heading over to the dock, we meet up with Steve and Roxy, who are dealing with members of Team Plasma. They just reiterate that they're the evil organization from 2 years ago, and they're just kinda annoyed at how their time in this area had gone, chased by Lillipup and now getting into trouble. It's 3 of us and 3 of them, so they decide to try taking us on to steal our Pokemon. When that doesn't quite pan out for them, they scatter, running away back to Route 20. When we catch up to one of them and defeat them, they run away again. this time mentioning heading toward the ocean. This has Steve thinking they're traveling by boat, and with the large pier at Castelia, it's only natural we might track down a larger force of them there. So it's back to the harbor where Roxy's having a moment with her dad regarding his movie debut. There's a little bit of nonsense that just ends with Roxy saying, "Do your job, but pursue acting in your free time." Roxy heads out, Captain returns to his duties, and once inside, Steve and I finally set sail for Castelia City. And alright, it's time to say it. What is even happening with the main story right now? By this point in the originals, we already had deep, philosophical Pokemon questions asked multiple times, and multiple battles with a lead adversary. But here, all we really have is, why is Team Plasma still around after 2 years? And why is Steve afraid of losing Pokemon? All the main story events have felt random and mashed together. How do you go from potentially the best Pokemon story of all time to where is the story? Where is a single character worthy of analysis to this point? Again, the main things to analyze are, what is this character from the originals doing now? While we don't always care about these things in Pokemon, Black and White 1 was a massive step forward in that regard. You wouldn't expect a massive step backward this soon. On to Castelia City, and it mostly remains the same from the originals, with the biggest changes being Fennel's lab is now in the city, and there's a way to access the sewer system. The side quest with finding the dancers is instead replaced by a Find the Clowns side quest, and instead of giving an amulet coin, these guys give you the bicycle and a rare candy. You can also head to Liberty Garden without needing the pass, though Victini will no longer be there. If you trade Victini over to these games, there is a cutscene that occurs with it, but sadly, unlike the other mythicals, this doesn't involve teaching Victini's signature move. Even more sad, this signature move is event only until Generation 8, where you can get it via Move Reminder. Is the move blatantly overpowered? Yes, 180 base power. And you can use the move multiple turns in a row? That's just crazy. I'd take about an hour to explore the city before trying to head into the gym, but our freshwater distributor is standing outside. Berg said there might be trouble and took off to investigate. Overhearing the conversation, in comes Iris, another familiar face from the originals. We tell her we're looking for Team Plasma, and she's shocked to hear that, as she believes they disbanded 2 years ago. But she knows a place in the city that suspicious people might hide, and that's the sewers. Steve catches up with us there and heads in to see if they're down there. He decides we should look together, and we team up for double battling throughout the sewers. After a while, we find some shady Team Plasma members, and they're still going on about that Pokemon liberation garbage. And we really wouldn't understand these statements without playing the originals through first, and we certainly wouldn't understand it on a deeper level with how the liberation grift was just a front for Ghetsis taking over the world. We defeat them, they run away, and out of a back area within the sewers comes Berg. He claims there was no one else that was suspicious down there, so Steve gives us the strength TM and takes his leave. But just after, a suspicious character emerges from a hole in the wall. Finally, a clearly important character to analyze. He compliments our battle and how we brought out the power in our Pokemon, then proceeds to take his leave. Because yeah, we can really analyze any bit of his character from that. Berg's just confused, and invites us to either train our Pokemon further here, or come challenge him at the gym. If we delve deeper into the sewers, we'll find the Relic Passage, housing some Rock-type Pokemon you might want for the next badge. We can also find a secluded, grassy area of the city, which we can use to find Audino to train up our Pokemon. I did this for a full hour, then made my way out of the sewers. I wasn't exactly complaining about the level grinding at this point, because I knew this was pre-full party experience. And besides, it gave me an excuse to watch some YouTube while working on it. Talking to Iris after you exit the sewers is basically just a reminder to go to the gym, so I'd head there next and take everyone on. Berg is still a bug-type gym leader, however this gym drastically transforms from the originals, being all about a silk-woven nest rather than a beehive. It does appear as though you can skip a few trainers here, so you can choose to be rewarded for puzzle solving. His Pokemon are the same, so it remains not much of a contest, especially if you chose the Fire starter or picked up a Growlithe in Verbank. I used a combo of Tranquil and Lucario, and man, Buggrass is just a terrible typing, huh? 2 4x weaknesses, 4 additional weaknesses on top of that? A truly unfortunate existence. We grab the badge, and for now, we'll follow a pretty similar path to the originals. We'll head north of the city to go to Route 4, but before we can, the mysterious character from the sewers stops us. And we finally get some character depth. He asks to get a look at our Pokemon, and is fascinated by the confidence our Lucario exudes compared to the others of the same species. Fascinated because we're still a fairly new trainer. He introduces himself, a scientist named Colress. He shares that the theme of his research is bringing out the power of Pokemon. However, How exactly does one bring out the maximum power of their Pokemon? Is it through the bond they share with them as Pokemon and trainer? To test his theory, he wants to have a battle with us out on Route 4. We can potentially draw some early connections here. Colress is clearly an important character, and with his goal to bring out the power of Pokemon, might he be a bit of a mad scientist? Might he not really care about ethics when trying to bring out a Pokemon's power? We'll have to see. On our way out to Route 4, Bianca stops us in the same spot as the originals. Rather than having a battle with us, she gives us the dowsing machine, helping us to find hidden items. Though if you have an idea of where to look, you can get a pretty large amount of them in this game without using it. The sequels expand on the amount of version differences, and Route 4 is completely different between the two games. Here in White 2, we still have the constant sandstorm and a disheveled ruin area that was uncovered during construction. But in Black 2, somehow they have the power to control the weather, fully stopping the sandstorm, and this is a fully developed street, complete with new buildings and all. On the route, we can battle some trainers and catch some Pokemon, running into Colress a bit further on. There's a roadblock ahead, in the form of a large group of Crustle sleeping in the road. Colress is able to get them to scurry away, having a device he claims energizes Pokemon. With the Crustle gone, Colress starts some deep thinking. He brings up Team Plasma, who said Pokemon should be liberated to bring out their full potential. Colress disagrees with this, saying that people are the ones who can bring out the hidden potential of Pokemon, and battles us to see if we can bring out that potential. With his steel types, he's no match for our Lucario. He's pleased with our battling abilities, understanding that we bring out our Pokemon's power by being kind to them, making me wonder if this dialogue would change if your Pokemon had low friendship. He thanks us for our help and expresses his frustration at the fact that we can't talk to Pokemon, as it would make studying them that much easier. But a person like that could never exist, he says, because apparently he doesn't know about N. After this he leaves, hoping to see us again sometime. We further explore Route 4. Being in White 2, we have the ruined buildings to explore. In real life, people deciding to live out in this area would definitely need to be studied. Constantly sandstorming, rundown buildings, you'd really have to enjoy the Pokemon found in this area, I guess. We explore there and the desert resort, and once bored, we head north to Nimbasa Join Avenue. Yeah, this is an endgame area you might come back to much later. If you connect with a bunch of people over Wi-Fi or wireless, you can get new shops and upgrade your game a bit. But for now, it's just another side area you're inconvenienced with in the main story. The manager of the avenue doesn't have time to run the place, so he makes us the manager of it. If I could insert myself into the game, I'd open the door to Route 4 and let it become sandy ruins like the outside area. We're given assistants that say come talk to them when we're ready, so I took the opportunity to GTFO and never come back. Where was I? Nimbasa City. There's been a few upgrades around the city, becoming a bit more of a scenic attraction, which includes some upgrades to the amusement park area. There isn't really anything story related here for now, but instead has loads of side content to explore. And as usual, I took the time to check everything out here, like battling with Rosa at the Battle Subway, visiting the stadiums, and going on a Ferris wheel date with a Liepard enjoyer. I also went to the surrounding routes, which includes a moment with Bianca introducing us to hidden grottos. I spent some time training in the forest, then took to riding the roller coasters to unlock the new gym. The new gym is a fashion runway, a stage for models to show off, not only their outfits, but their battling skills. Since it's a runway, there aren't exactly any alternate paths to take. While I don't necessarily mind that change alone, that's 3 gyms now that are just straight lines. Seeing as you have to go through the old gym to get to the new one though, maybe this one's more justified? Perhaps Gym 2 probably should have been spiced up more. Thankfully, Elisa spices up her team in the sequels here, adding a Flaffy as well as a Joltik when on challenge mode. She'll be sporting a full team of Volt Switch users to limit the effectiveness of negative status moves against her. I braved it all with Lucario, and he just managed to be able to grab a solo victory, just needing average luck of 3 hits on Bone Rush for Zebstrika and some high friendship for Return on Emolga. We get the badge, and Elisa walks us off the runway. Time for us to get some more story action. Trying to head west of the city after the gym, we run into a blockade of Team Plasma members. Steve is already there to confront them and ask what they're doing. They claim to not be doing anything, and counter-argue what did they do to be interrogated by him. He admits that they specifically at this moment in time probably didn't do anything to him, but he knows they represent a group of Pokemon thieves, and he can't forgive them for that. The Plasma members are tired of him yapping, and surround him, challenging him to a battle. Since it's 4-on-1, we jump in to cover him. taking on 2 of the members in a single battle. We take them down, getting them to flee the city. And this is finally when Steve shares his story with us.
5 years ago, Team Plasma stole my little sister's purloin. It had been given to her as a present. I was only a little kid. I couldn't do anything. So that's why I have to get stronger.
Holy crap, actual story information. This lets us know that Team Plasma had been up to no good since before the events of the original games, and lets us know that Steve is so afraid of losing Pokemon because he's experienced it before. Being just a little kid at the time, he wasn't able to do anything to stop it. That's his motivation for getting stronger. He wants to make sure that he never loses another Pokemon again, which, if we can remember, is what Berg argued in the original games, saying this would be the result of Team Plasma stealing others' Pokemon. And it's also apparent that Steve wants to exact some amount of revenge against Team Plasma. For now though, he thanks us for our help and asks us to keep filling out the Pokedex and getting stronger to help him out. Time for us to move on to the next city to do just that. There's a few people on Route 5 I haven't battled yet, which includes the Heartbreaker. His name is Charles, sporting a triple battle here in White 2. This clears the path, letting us head to Driftvale. Just inside, we spot a Spider-Man meme standoff between 2 Team Plasma members, though one is wearing the black outfit that we've become used to seeing in this game, with the other wearing the classic white and gray outfit from the original games. These Team Plasma members are old friends, but one, the one dressed in white and gray, has learned that stealing Pokemon from others is wrong. We learn from their conversation that the ex-Team Plasma members still desire to follow N, while the current members of Team Plasma view him as a traitor. Steve interrupts the conversation, shoving the member of current Team Plasma. Not wanting to cause any trouble for the time being, he retreats, and Steve chases after him. Acknowledging that we were listening to their conversation, the ex-Team Plasma member assures us he's fine. He explains to us how after the events of the first story, Team Plasma split in 2, and we learn the current Team Plasma appears to be still following Getsus. And if we'd like to hear more from the current followers of N, they have a home here in Driftvale. With that, he walks off, allowing us to explore the city. Driftvale has undergone quite a number of changes. Most notably, the cold storage is gone, now hosting the Pokemon World Tournament. To accommodate this, there's a number of hotels around. If we head north, we'll find there's a new cave area under construction to connect to Twist Mountain more directly. And we'll also see this Team Plasma house the member spoke of. They're standing outside, along with a member of the 7 Sages, Rd. He wishes for us to be able to understand this half of Team Plasma further. Before telling us their story, he'd like to see what kind of Pokemon trainer we are, finally giving us a battle with a member of the 7 Sages. Steve just kinda awkwardly joins us after the battle, having lost the current Team Plasma member. Introductions are made, and Steve asks what makes these members of Team Plasma different from the other ones. Rd explains that they take care of the Pokemon that were stolen now, as a way to atone for their misdeeds. But Steve isn't having it, blaming them for his sister's purloin being stolen, and demands to know where it is. Rd apologizes for this happening to him, but doesn't know where his purloin would be. While his apology doesn't solve anything, he admits that they were in the wrong, and this group of Team Plasma is doing what they can to move forward. Not quite understanding, Steve's had enough of this talking, and runs off to go beat the gym. He wants to get stronger, strong enough to pummel any member of Team Plasma that stands in his way. Rd is upset with his past self, making trainers like Steve suffer. He says he can't do anything to thank us for hearing him out, but in fact has a favor to ask of us. He wants us to look after a Zorua. If we accept it, we find it originally belonged to N. In the present day, this would be the only way to get a Zorua in the Gen 5 games, as while both Zorua and Zoroark had special events in the originals, they required either a specific event Celebi or a specific event Shiny Raikou, Entei, or Suicune. Needlessly elaborate, but that's Pokemon, I guess. There's still more I had to do around the city, and I also went ahead to Route 6 to train up a little bit further and catch some Pokemon there. We can go into Chargestone Cave as well, finally getting roadblocked by the bridge connecting the 2 halves of the cave collapsing. You can't see that it's collapsed, but just trust me bruh. This will get us to head back to Driftvale and take on the gym, with minimal or no grinding necessary. The redesign of this gym has a lot of different paths, leading to a lot of optional trainers to fight if you wish, which I don't think is better or worse than the original gameplay-wise. But I like this one better aesthetically. Just outside, Steve stops us, letting us know that we're probably gonna have a rough time, even if we just have water-type Pokemon. How did he predict Michaela's downfall? At least we have Mamba, who gets knocked into Overgrow range, allowing for a second Leaf Blade to knock out Excadrill. getting us the badge and evening up the count with Steve, who's still waiting for us outside of the gym, thankful that we were able to get the badge and thankful toward his Pokemon for helping him out in getting it. He also wanted to ask Clay why he forgave Team Plasma, letting them live in the city, and Clay dropped some fat, juicy facts.
There's always room for folks to grow and change, ain't there? And if you only go after what you think is right, you might end up rejecting all thoughts and opinions other than your own. That's mighty dangerous.
Some of us in the real world should be taking notes here. Being a well-rounded person is able to see both sides of an argument is important. It helps you think rationally about the argument and come to a conclusion based on who is more correct. The sharing of conflicting ideas and opinions is important. While some of these ideas may be blatantly terrible, hearing how bad these ideas are leads to thinking of better ideas to replace it. And if these new ideas are good enough, it'll eventually become popular opinion over time. With 5 gym badges in hand, Clay wants us to partake in the Pokemon World Tournament. A competition to see who's the strongest sounds like special training, so Steve's in. And minimal exploring will tell you this will be a major endgame activity. We head inside the building where Clay tells us he wants us to participate in the Driftvale Tournament. He also called Sharon to come participate. And while he was busy, the tournament sounds like fun, so he gives in and we all go register. We get to bring 3 Pokemon, and we'll just need to win 3 battles to become the champion. But it won't be an easy ride, as we find out that Steve is going to be our first opponent. Which, holy crap, this is our first rival battle since Flockacy Ranch, where we had 0 gym badges. Black and White 1 took a road of perhaps way too many rival battles, then Black and White 2 took the road of definitely not enough, and this battle with him doesn't reflect his true strength, because the opponents in the tournament are capped at level 25, but we appear to retain our level at least visually. However, we won't gain experience like a normal battle. We take down Steve, then Sharon, who only has normal types, and make it to the finals, where we once again meet with Colress. He says before the fight that as a scientist, he seeks the truth, as well as the ideal way to do things. He wants the best way to bring out the power of Pokemon to be the trust trainers and their Pokemon share, and he wants us to show him that's true. By beating him, we certainly show him that our Pokemon trust us, and our trust in our Pokemon has made us the victor of the Driftvale Tournament. Clay thanks us for our participation and hopes to see us return later to participate again, as it'll help Driftvale City make more money. Okay there, Mr. Krabs. Clay heads out, and this briefly frees us up to speak with others in the lobby of the Pokemon World Tournament. We can speak with Colress in the lobby, but don't gain much more info from him. Sharon, Steve, and I head outside, and as we're talking, a Team Plasma grunt runs by in a hurry. And Steve is like a dog when it sees a squirrel. He's gone. Colress says he shouldn't rush into something dangerous like that, but the pursuit of Purloin is too strong. Wanting to back him up, Sharon runs in after him. Colress then wonders if Steve thinks he can do anything as long as his Pokemon are by his side. Perhaps the bond with Pokemon makes him think he can overcome the impossible. And we can draw a parallel to real life here. If you think you can do anything, you end up doing more things. Things you might think are impossible normally. Trusting in yourself and your ability to do those things is how many feats that seem impossible are accomplished. Following Steve and Sharon leads us to boarding a boat. A boat that just so happens to be Team Plasma's base of operations. They know we're here, and they're already waiting to ambush us. They attack us from all sides, forcing us into single battles and double battles alike. Steve desperately asking each one he pulverizes where his sister's Purloin is. After we clean them all up, we want these grunts to answer a lot of questions for us. But before we can ask anything, their boss, hearing the commotion, enters the scene. It's who other than Zinzolin, the sage who is shivering here in the cold storage 2 years ago. He does tell us some useful info. Team Plasma is looking for the legendary dragon Pokemon to use it to help them rule the Unova region, then proceeds to use the Shadow Triad to kick us off the ship. But finally, we get some semblance of what it is the current Team Plasma is even doing. Basically, all we've seen at this point is them running around like chickens with their head cut off, seemingly not having much direction. But perhaps the main goal for the grunts is to simply locate N, assuming this is the legendary dragon they're speaking of. Speaking to Sharon after, he's not entirely sure what they meant, since Zekrom and Reshiram allegedly aren't in the Unova region anymore. This leads him to want to further investigate, so he heads to Route 6. Following him, we find him outside the Seasons Research Lab. They've found records indicating massive temperature drops at Lucanosa Town. Lacunosa Town, and there were similar temperature drops in Castelia City and Driftvale City. On board the plasma ship, Sharon mentioned it was rather cold on board, and we're supposed to potentially draw the conclusion that Team Plasma is now hiding out near Lacunosa. Sharon wants to further investigate the matters, but gives us the HM for Surf to help us continue our journey. If we talk to a scientist here, we can pick up a deerling with its hidden ability to accompany us on the journey if we wish, but I felt my team was okay as is. So we continue on, looking to re-enter Chargestone Cave. Before we can, we're stopped by a Pokemon jumping out in front of us. It just looks at us for a moment, cries, then runs away. Following this, an elderly man, accompanied by Rd, walk over to us, filling us in on what that might have been about. This Pokemon was Cobalion, who, along with Virizion and Terrakion, fought against people to protect Pokemon from war. These Pokemon understood the actions of humans could have major consequences on the world of Pokemon, just like our actions in real life can negatively impact the world around us. But they aren't sure why Cobalion would be wandering about now. Is it active from the problems Team Plasma stirred up 2 years ago? Or is this foreshadowing a larger problem ahead? Rd's unsure if this appearance by Cobalion was mere coincidence. Perhaps it was asking for us to help it. But in either case, he suggests trying to befriend Cobalion, as it's a strong Pokemon that might be able to assist in our journey. While I contemplate doing that, I explore a cave we can access across the river. Once all is explored, I went back to Chargestone Cave, where the bridge is now fixed. While trying to cross it, we hear someone off in the distance. They express their enjoyment of the cave, but state they need to leave to save Pokemon and to protect the very friend they have to stop. We don't get to see who this was speaking, but with enough prior knowledge, we can piece it together. You might think Colress would look right at home in here, but knowledge of the previous story would tell us this character was N. His dialogue in the originals tells us this is one of his favorite places, and he has to leave here to save Pokemon, something N would obviously do. Solidifying this is protecting the friend they have to stop, as this would likely refer to Getsis, or possibly referring to current Team Plasma as a whole. We continue on through the cave, sporting many trainer battles, including some triple and rotation battles, which were definitely a lot more present in the sequels. We'll find Bianca further in the cave, studying Tynamo, but not providing much info otherwise. So I cleared out the rest of the cave and made my way into Mistralton City. Passing by the Pokemon Center, we finally meet with Professor Juniper for the first time. She was very hands-on in the development of the Nuvema Town trio in the original games, but has conversely been very hands-off in our development in the sequel. She does make up for it with a pretty good gift though, the Master Ball, capable of catching any Pokemon without fail. Mimicking the scene from the original games, Skyla then joins us, reminding Juniper that they're supposed to be flying out to get Juniper across the region. But before they do, Juniper wants to check out Celestial Tower. We can follow her first for optional training or take on Skyla at the gym. Since I have 6 Pokemon, I opted for the tower. But of course, I go around and talk to everyone in the city first, and everyone on the routes. Something I found as a fun little detail between the originals and the sequels here is the hiker in this house on Route 7. In the original, he asks to be traded a Bulldor for his Emolga, but this evolves the Bulldor from the trade, and apparently he doesn't like the Gigalith he received, so he asks us for an Emolga in exchange for it. Isn't that just something? I wish my memory was a little better when playing video games, because such a clearly intentional moment like this that's meant to be a reference is something that would usually go over my head. But when you remember things like this, it's really cool. References back to the originals are really strong at this point, because as we head toward Twist Mountain, we'll get stopped from a phone call with our mom in the exact same spot. Part of these moments is obviously just trying to save time from a coding perspective, but each of these events are intentionally changed slightly to make them belong in these updated titles. The phone call with our mom says similar dialogue, but our mom in this game used to be a Pokemon Center attendant, so she emphasizes that we should heal up our Pokemon as soon as they get hurt, which is a good reminder to step into the house next to us, as there's someone there who heals your Pokemon, and a good reminder to use the Field Nurse in Celestial Tower to our advantage as we make our way up. But this is just an optional side area in this game, as opposed to you needing to climb up here for Skyla in the original. Once we've had our fill of training, we can take on the gym. Skyla's gym has also been redesigned. Instead of violently shooting children out of cannons, she's violently slamming them into walls with sudden wind gusts, which I guess is an improvement. What is an improvement is I'm pretty sure there's more than one optional trainer this time, and Skyla's team has also improved, replacing Pheasant with Skarmory, ensuring her team doesn't get completely walked by rock or ice type moves, but it still does for electric type. I still have Zeep from the Flockacy Ranch, who is in Ampharos now, and with the modest nature, it's an absolute unit here. For this playthrough, I didn't level cap before the gym leader, but instead got everyone up to level with the gym leader before entering, so Zeep's a bit stronger even, making the gym a breeze. Do you get it? This is where our path diverges from the original games. Outside, we meet back up with Juniper, and she says she wants us to come with her to meet someone in Opelousas City, and we'll be getting there by flying with Skyla to Lantimas Town, then taking the surrounding routes from there. Once we're ready to leave, we can speak with her in the cargo service building, and once we do, Bianca will show up, wanting to come with us to go to Reversal Mountain. But this made me wonder, does she not have a Pokemon with Fly? She was the one who gave us the HM for that in the first game. Perhaps she just wants some group bonding in or something. So we all fly to Lantimas Town. Juniper tells us why she brought us here, which was Sharon relaying to her the news of what Team Plasma said at the PWT. She quickly fills in with some info on the events from 2 years ago. Since our 2 legendary dragons should no longer be in the Unova region, she wants to hear what the Opelousas City gym leader, Drayden, would have to say about it. And because this was the first time I had played Gen 5 in years, I finally made a realization.
And I would also... wait. I just realized. Drayton? Drayden?
We can explore the sandy Lantimas Town and move onward to the sandy route, which is accompanied by a strange house. Inside, we can fight a few trainers who seem lost in here, and be jump scared as furnishings in the house rearrange themselves as we go in and out of the rooms, and jump scared by an actual ghost inside. By exploring all the rooms, we can complete this side quest. In the final room, receiving the Lunar Wing, which the Ghost Girl asks us to bring back to the Pokemon it belongs to, giving us the hint that it will be on a bridge. A pretty ominous scene in the game. We can presume this Ghost Girl must have been subject to the nightmares of Darkrai. It's a pretty lengthy detour. Upon finishing it, we can investigate Reversal Mountain. This is another location that will be different between these games. In Black 2, this is a temperate cave with water and similar cool but not cold features inside. But in White 2 here, it's a volcanic cave with magma and hot features inside. And honestly, it seems the only reason for this change is to explain the version-exclusive Pokemon. In White 2, the Numel line is here, and in Black 2, the Spoink line is here. It's just those two that are different, that's it. It would make a lot more sense for this effort to have been spent on legendary Pokemon, but in both games, once you get the Magma Stone, it's Heatran that you find in here. So if these version exclusives are the sole reason they changed the look of the cave, that's an incredibly close attention to detail, which honestly just seems so incredibly distant from the games we have today. If we do have big version changes, they're usually very important, but perhaps this is the sort of love and care we might see with extra development time. Bianca is here. She's found out something she wants to investigate here in Reversal Mountain, but she wants some help dealing with the wild Pokemon around. So Bianca's tagging along for some doubles action. This takes a very long time to go about if you're battling the wild Pokemon. So after like an hour of exploring around, we find out this is the lair of Heatran. I think maybe I missed another prompt from Bianca elsewhere because this is the only thing I found her saying. I reached the exit and she said she wanted to keep looking around to learn more about Heatran. So she thanks us for our time and we enter Undella Town, a nice little ocean town filled with beaches and rich people. For some reason I didn't really explore the town right away, instead opting to take a 20-minute detour to progress as far as I could into Undella Bay, getting some training done in the process. Then I looked around Undella, which led to me bumping into our rival, simply saying we should see how well we've raised our Pokemon, finally giving us a proper rival battle 6.5 badges in. I know you can't get half a badge, but you know what I mean. Steve will have Unfezant, the elemental monkey weak to our starter, and his starter that's strong against ours. He opts for a mix of Sharon and Bianca's playstyle, each member of his team having held items, but also holding a potion just in case. I have the type matchups to deal with him, so all goes smoothly. While we finally get a good battle out of him, Steve doesn't really say anything he hasn't before. He'll get his sister's Purloin from Team Plasma, who will be running away from us because we're so strong, and keep working on that Pokedex and getting stronger. He comes off as very one-dimensional, and sure, there's only so much you can get through in the length of a Pokemon story, but Sharon and Bianca were two rivals, and each one of them had more depth than this one rival, who you would expect to be curated to be stronger than either from a character standpoint. I took a while to explore the surrounding routes, on one of which we run into a familiar sight, the overworld sprite of Cobalion. Usually legendaries are saved until the postgame, but the Swords of Justice are available to us as we finish up the main story. With the power of Zeep's paralysis, it only takes about 5 minutes to take on and shove it in the boxes. I find it funny just how close Cobalion is to La Cunosa Town though. Like, none of the residents wanted to go out and catch the big legendary Pokemon right outside town, with not even a single mandatory blade of grass to walk through. Making our way over to the Pokemon Center, Juniper and Bianca appear from the northern part of town. Bianca used to fly to get here, proving that she just rode with us in the plane for funsies. Juniper brings us over to one of the townsfolk and wants her to tell us about an old tale about La Cunosa Town. She tells us of the Giant Chasm, which was created long ago when a big meteorite fell from the sky. Inside of it was a Pokemon, a scary Pokemon who freezes everything and eats people. La Cunosa Town's ancestors built up walls around the town and made a rule forbidding anyone from going out at night and risking running into such a beast. This is the end of the lady's tale, but the information might be useful in our investigation. We talk it over outside, trying to make connections between the legendary dragon-type Pokemon and this dragon from the tale. Juniper posits the meteorite connects the Pokemon, since Reshiram was revived from the Light Stone. While they may not be the same Pokemon, elements from the Giant Chasm and the Dragon Spiral Tower date to about the same time period, suggesting that there's some link between this Dragon of Ice and Reshiram. We don't have concrete proof of a solid link between the two, but this information is something we may need to make note of for later. Bianca and Juniper make a couple less meaningful suggestions before Juniper once again tells us to speak to Drayden about all of this, which of course can wait until I talk to all of the residents of the town and steal all their stuff. But preventing me from entering the last house in the city is Steve, who says he heard a rumor about Team Plasma being around, which we might expect from the prior weather anomalies. And right on cue, here comes Zinzolin and a Plasma Grunt. He tells us the reason why he's still a part of Team Plasma is he's curious how the world will change. He wants to see what a world would look like where people are forced to give up a product of civilization, something they typically do not easily do. Steve doesn't care for what he has to say, and has us challenge these two to a double battle. Zinzolin says we remind him of the trainer from 2 years ago, but Team Plasma's out here looking for something a scientist told them might be in Opelucid City. What could this be? And who could this scientist be? They quickly run away, Steve chasing after them, scurrying across Route 12, then Village Bridge, and then Route 11 before they reach Opelucid. There are a ton of trainers for us to battle across these locations, taking the better part of an hour with animations. Reaching the end of Route 11, we're stopped by the loud cry of a Pokemon. Curiously, it's Virizion, who walks over in front of us, challenging us to a battle. And here's a fun fact: you can just defeat the Swords of Justice and return later after the Elite Four, allowing you to catch them at level 65 instead of 45, but I opted to catch it now.
69 Ultra Ball. Nice. That means we have a 69% chance to catch it, right? Surely. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
I promise you this is a coincidence, but we're now also on page 69 of the script. Nice. With that done, we can walk into Opelucid City, where Iris drops a bombshell. Drayden is her grandpa, meaning Drayton is her brother. Oh wait, they're not actually related. Well, Drayton does have that purple spot in his hair, surely that meant something here, right? She tells us we might want to go to Route 9 before battling the gym, and compliments our style of training. After exploring the city, I do just that, heading to Route 9, catching some Pokemon, and fighting some trainers. And fighting even more trainers in the shopping mall. Even after this, I had some more training to do with Audino. Of course, taking a break to appreciate the Milo. With him by my side, I could take on the Dragon-type gym with confidence. And thank God, this gym is different from the original games. Thanks to the redesign of the Dragon, only half of the trainers are mandatory here. And it's in a healthy way, making you have to choose which of the trainers' fighting styles you'd rather face. This will change the opposing Pokemon's abilities, trainer actions, and make you choose between a triple and a rotation battle. But I'll say again, I usually fight everyone anyway. I just don't want to be forced to fight 7 people before the gym leader. Drayden replaces the Fracture he or Iris had in the originals with a Flygon, and will add an Altaria on challenge mode, only technically increasing his type diversity. All of his Pokemon but Altaria have Dragon Tail, so good luck setting anything up. I did have good luck with it at first, but once I got +4 on Azumarill, he started spamming. I eventually just started going at it with my normal types to take him down. We do the normal gym badge stuff, then he follows us outside to talk further about the legendary dragon-type Pokemon of Unova. And to be real here, his story isn't 100% coherent, there just seems to be a bit of missing dialogue from it to help him transition between his points. He tells us how Reshiram, the Dragon of Truth, and Zekrom, the Dragon of Ideals, were once the same Pokemon, and around when the dragons split apart, the third dragon, Kyurem, came to be. He tells us about an ancient item that has been passed down in his family, the DNA splicers. Then he suggests that perhaps there's another legendary dragon Pokemon. With Reshiram and Zekrom becoming powerful beings, perhaps Kyurem was just the husk left over from this powerful original dragon. Upon finishing this thought, we hear and feel a large rumble coming from outside. We walk outside to find a pirate ship flying over the city. Because yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And it readies a weapon, a cannon that shoots down ice spikes all over Opelucid City. Okay, this doesn't feel random at all. Drayden tries to break the ice, but I guess his pickup line wasn't good enough. Laughing at his efforts is Zinzolin, who enters the scene. Team Plasma created this ice with their special technology. It's never melt ice that also can't be broken. Zinzolin wants Drayden to hand over the DNA splicers. Drayden refuses to simply hand them over, so the Team Plasma members run off searching for them. Alongside Drayden, we battle the Team Plasma members throughout the city, trying to drive them out, confronting Zinzolin once we reach the gym. My goodness, more than one battle with the 7th Sage? Amazing. Defeating him makes him admit that we're adept at handling Pokemon, and tells us to envision a world enveloped in ice, because that's what lies ahead. He takes off, Drayden taking his place in front of us. Drayden says thanks for the help, and retrieves the DNA splicers from within the gym. He hands them over to us, but just after, a member of the Shadow Triad steals them. They scatter, and we have to chase after them. We're able to track down one, but he stalls for time by battling us, not being the one who has them. So the three of them escape, and we need to plan our next move. Sharon and Steve call us about the whole incident, and head over to meet up with us. Sharon arrives first, filling us in of their likely whereabouts thanks to the weather report. They're likely in Himulao City, north of Undella Town, so we'll need to head there next. I figured that's where the seaside cave would lead to, so I made my way there. But if you do this, Steve will call you asking where you're at. He'll let you know you can get to Himulao from the Marine Tube, which is the gate going out north of Undella Town. It makes you wonder, why exactly are there two direct routes to the same city? In the interest of urgency, we'll fly back to town and take the tube. Apparently, we didn't need to be urgent though, because upon arriving, Steve tells us to go ahead and defeat the gym leader before we start searching for them, which I feel makes no sense, but I guess he's the boss of us? I still would have gone around talking to people first, but for some reason, the gym leader isn't in the gym, and instead, he's swimming in the ocean, but just going over to enter one of the random houses in the city gets him to go out of the ocean and back to the gym, making you ask what the point of that was. I guess maybe he only shows up if you have the 7 badges and Steve is here or something? And all of our urgency went out the window, because I took an hour-long detour to go out and get some more yellow shards for the master move tutor that's here. Because you bet I wanted to get Drain Punch for Lucario, even though I didn't need it for this badge. With that, enough was enough though, and I went into the 8th gym. The 8th gym is now a water-type gym, replacing the ice-type gym from the originals. There aren't too many skippable trainers in here, but I'm also pretty sure there was one trainer I couldn't figure out how to get to. So all in all, most of the gyms in the sequels get a passing grade design-wise. The new gym leader is Marlon, with Scald as his signature move. We still have Growth on Mamba, and Grass-type is the obvious move here, so it was no contest. Marlon's an interesting new character. Bro embodies Hakuna Matata. After giving us the badge, he just goes back to swimming, but somehow comes from the southern beach when we exit the gym to talk to Steve. Marlon is so invested in the ocean life that he's never heard of Team Plasma. He asks us if we think they're bad people, to which we obviously respond yes to. He understands why we fight against them, but thinks we should put it in our own words. Perhaps a lesson we're supposed to get here is not blindly acting against something without first understanding exactly why it is you're acting against it. And the reason why has to come from your own beliefs, not the beliefs that someone else is trying to impose on you, even if at the end of the day, you do agree with them on the end goal. Steve's unsure if he's laid back or irresponsible. What I find irresponsible though is Steve sends us the wrong way way toward Route 22. But this does have us find Terrakion, and when we do, Colress appears. Explaining Terrakion is probably seeking a strong trainer, sensing the danger emanating from Team Plasma. He reminds us about the power of caring for Pokemon, because caring for Pokemon helps to bring out their true powers. Before leaving, he hands us his Colress machine, and hints at the fact that we should actually be on Route 21, as there's a similar roadblock to when we met him on Route 4. Terrakion ended up being a bit of a pain to catch, taking 16 minutes, but doing so gives us all of the swords of justice. I stuck around Route 22, finishing everything we can until the Team Plasma roadblock at the entrance of the giant chasm cave. Circling back now, it's actually time to fully clear out the seaside cave, doing about half of it earlier to train for the gym. There's an exit on the east wall that's being blocked by a Crustle, hinting that if we use the Colress machine, it'll energize the Crustle, which starts a battle with it. I stuffed it in a ball to move forward. The exit leads to a beach from which we can spot Team Plasma's ship, and Marlon's there to save the day, lowering the plank, allowing us to board the ship. He still doesn't know for sure if Team Plasma's bad, but what he knows is that we had a problem, and he wanted to help out. And for him, that's as good enough a reason as any to take action. But it wasn't enough for him to stick around and fight. He reminds us to think about why it is we're fighting against them. As long as we truly believe it, the strength of our beliefs is what will give us and our Pokemon power. After all, if you don't actually believe in the thing you're arguing for, it's kinda hard to actually make a case for it. We step onto the ship, and we're immediately ambushed. We battle our way on board, and try to gun it for Zinzolin. However, there's a barrier blocking us from being able to go further into the ship. And for that, violence is the answer. We enter the password, deactivate the barrier, and find Zinzolin just inside. He reveals that Team Plasma has the legendary Pokemon Kyurem under their control. But even still, we pose a threat to them, so they try to eliminate us. 3, count 'em 3, battles with Zinzolin. It's a double battle with Steve, and they didn't even knock out a single Pokemon of ours. Steve correctly identifies Kyurem as the source of the attack on Apollucid, and demands to know where Purloin is. Zinzolin doesn't know for sure, but presumes someone else is off using it, and reminds him that other Purloin exist. Why not just catch another one? But that would be as simple-minded as, why not just get another dog or another cat if yours runs away? Steve reveals why this Purloin in particular means so much, and it's because it was caught by his late grandfather, so it's even more irreplaceable. Team Plasma was simply docked here to stall for time while Kyurem was resting. Now that it's all healed up, Zinzolin has the Shadow Triad kick us out, and Team Plasma is back on the move. Sharon arrives and tells us he suspects that they're headed for the giant chasm. Learning that Team Plasma is using the power of Kyurem, he understands the only ones that can stand up to it are Zekrom and Reshiram, making him think he'll just have to find one of the heroes from 2 years ago to help out. In the meantime, Steve and I head to the giant chasm. Once we reach Team Plasma's roadblock, another Team Plasma member comes to alleviate them of their duties. Steve tries to ambush him, but we learn this is the ex-Team Plasma member from Driftvale City, and that Rd has sent him to infiltrate current Team Plasma. Steve finds some additional motivation for stopping Team Plasma after speaking with him, wanting to help guys like him and N no longer be seen as bad guys. We move on ahead, hanging back to make sure we grab all of the items around here, and to unlock the passage from the chasm back to La Cunosa town. Getting further in, we reach a larger blockade of Team Plasma members, but standing there is ex-Team Plasma, trying to talk some reason into them. Rd insists that Getsus is only using Pokemon liberation as a means to get what he wanted, to make people powerless so he could rule over the Unova region, but the current Team Plasma members don't want to listen to a traitor. Steve knows the ex-Team Plasma members have Pokemon by their side. He tries to galvanize them, telling them the time to fight is now. But that only gets a couple of current Team Plasma members to come attack us, and beating them only causes backup to arrive. But Steve did galvanize them, and the time to fight is now. Before we move ahead, Rd lets us know that Steve's Purloin is likely in the hands of the Shadow Triad, and now he's more determined than ever. We board the ship and head beyond the living quarters to a sort of generator area. Inside, we deal with loads of Team Plasma members, going through a teleportation pad maze until we've undone another set of locks protecting the higher-ups deeper inside. This gets us a closer look at Kyurem, but unfortunately we don't have a way to free it. Even if we did, Zinzolin appears appears, eager to try and kick us off the ship here and now, giving us a fourth battle with him. So in the short time since the start of La Cunosa Town, we've now had as many battles with him as we've had with our rival throughout the rest of the story. A bit much if we're being honest. But hey, free experience for Lucario, I guess. We defeat Zinzolin and take another warp pad, which appears to take us to the captain's room. And inside, we're faced with an unexpected find. Colress. He's here, helping Team Plasma. And if you were able to adequately judge his initial character earlier, you'd find that yes, he would do whatever it takes to bring out the true power of Pokemon, even if that means helping out the bad guys with their research. He's seen the results that the bond between trainer and Pokemon can produce, but he's now also seen the results that the merciless and cruel approach to bringing out their power can bring. But he says even if the world is destroyed in the process of him having to find the true power of Pokemon, so be it. So it becomes clear that Colress is no longer a neutral character, but an evil character who is blinded by his own selfish ambitions. But it's not quite too late for him, as if we show him our approach of love and trust between trainer and Pokemon is superior, then he might see it as the optimal and ideal strategy. After a battle that saw him paralyze me 95 times, we defeat him, and this shows him the true potential of our approach, and this potential might be just enough to stop Team Plasma. So he decides to wait and see whether it will be us or Team Plasma who will be victorious. Following his directions, we enter Ghetsis' room. Ghetsis is infuriated by Colress. Having made him the boss of Team Plasma was a mistake, and Ghetsis now speaks of their plan to freeze over the Unova region with Kyurem. And in a change of dialect from the originals, he now outwardly acknowledges the goals and ambitions of Team Plasma's as his and his alone, and Kyurem is to be the vessel of those desires. I feel the need to bring up here that this is the first time we see Ghetsis in this game. Usually the second installment of a Pokemon game doesn't need the first one for context, but that's obviously why this game is titled Pokemon Black 2 or Pokemon White 2. Without the context of the original story, whether you don't remember it or you forgot what happened, this moment of Ghetsis being the ultimate villain behind Team Plasma just falls flat. Zinzolin or Colress feel like the more meaningful boss battles, because the context of how evil Ghetsis really is, that is what makes this confrontation powerful. Perhaps some scenes with flashbacks throughout the story would have gone a long way here, or even if when we met up with Sharon just before this, he showed us a flashback of the events of 2 years ago. That way we'd have a feel for Ghetsis as the strong and powerful manipulator and speaker that he is, and further establish that this is the final boss. This is the ultimate evil guy of the region that we need to take down. The current speech from Ghetsis was little more than buying time for them to finish transporting Kyurem out of the ship. Once it's done, a member of the Shadow Triad appears, and Ghetsis leaves it up to him to deal with us. As he leaves, Steve barges in, recognizing our foe as a member of the Shadow Triad. He demands to hear about Purloin, and in the twist that definitely everyone saw coming, Steve's Purloin has now evolved into a Liepard. After 5 years of the Shadow Triad member training it, the Liepard will now only follow his commands. And he a bit arrogantly suggests that if Team Plasma had won 2 years ago, maybe it would have gone back home to him and his sister by choice. Steve refuses to believe that this is the right Purloin. He swears that it has to be someone else's Pokemon. In between fights with the Shadow Triad members, we can talk to him, and he's distraught now that he's finally found his sister's Pokemon. Instead of love and joy, Liepard just stands there, glaring at him. We have to take down all of the members of the Shadow Triad to resolve this. They don't mind that they lost as long as Ghetsis is victorious in the end. The Shadow Triad member decides to release Purloin back to Steve, because if Ghetsis is about to freeze the world solid, he's going to have no further need of it. Steve simply asks us to stop Team Plasma to prevent more Pokemon from becoming sad, like Liepard and Kyurem are now. It's crushing. All Steve can do at the moment is just stand there, looking at the harsh gaze of the Pokemon that he's been searching for all this time. A naive person might say this seems like a happy ending, having found his Pokemon after 5 years. But of course, the final details end in tragedy. Oh, what a difference 5 years makes. While Steve's personal fight with Team Plasma might be over now, our fight with him isn't done just yet. We follow after Ghetsis, tracking him down to a cave at the end of the chasm. He stands at the source from which Kyurem's power resonates, summoning the beast to ready its attack on the region. Looking at us here and now gives him flashbacks of the day his original plans with N crumbled. He respects us though for making it as far as we have, but attempts to end it here and now by freezing us solid on the spot. Damn, they really almost killed us, didn't they? But stopping it in time, he finally arrives. It's N, here with the legendary dragon to save the day. N wants to stop Getsus, whose selfish desires are harming Kyurem. But Getsus says N acted selfishly when he decided not to help Getsus take over the world. I think that's not quite an equal level of selfishness there, but he forgives N for interrupting, because it has brought Reshiram to him without having to search for it himself. And with that, he pulls out his secret weapon, the DNA splicers. Kyurem, infused with the power of the DNA splicers, takes aim at Reshiram, firing purple beams of light. Reshiram tries to get away, but in the end, it was too much. Reshiram reverts back into the form of the Lightstone, and Kyurem absorbs the power of the Lightstone to fuse with Reshiram, creating the new monstrosity, White Kyurem, stealing Reshiram's ability, boosting its stats to a commanding 700 base total, and becoming one of the strongest non-mega special attackers of all time. Now with the power to control both fire and ice, there's no longer anything to stop Kyurem from being able to cover the world in ice. Except for us. Cocky with this new and improved form of Kyurem, he decides to let us challenge it. He notices our Pokemon shaking with rage, but doesn't think that's actually the case, as simple tools wouldn't be able to have such thought and emotion of their own. We get to see what Getsus truly thinks of Pokemon. He doesn't see them as living beings, no thoughts, no emotions, no personality. Only creatures that happen to have powers that are capable of getting him what he wants. If we speak with N, he lets us know that he can still hear Reshiram's voice, and it says they can still be separated, but we'll need to act quickly. Getsus is just smug and wants to see the look on our face when we lose, so I guess we'll have to wipe that look right off of him. This was a tough battle, but only because I didn't want to use too much of my healing resources beforehand, and nobody would frickin' heal me unless I were to go back to the doctor on the plasma ship. But I'm not blameless here. Apparently it was a great idea to lead Unpheasant against an ice type. Unpheasant did almost get the win solo though. Getsus lets you know you aren't able to catch Kyurem because of his staff, which disrupts the function of Pokeballs, so knocking it out is completely planned. Zeep finishes it off, making Kyurem and Reshiram separate. Getsus is understandably annoyed by this, but he's not panicking just yet. He'll just have to settle for taking us out himself. Thankfully before the battle, N heals us with his psychic powers or something like that. I mean, he did it in the original games before the Getsus fight too, so I guess that's the explanation. What's incredibly interesting is all the Pokemon on Getsus' team are weaker than the original games, most of his team being level 50 with Hydreigon being level 52. This is unless you are on challenge mode where they will have level 54 with Hydreigon being 56. But we would have to ask, for the main version of the game, would the regression in his strength be intentional? Perhaps it's a commentary on the training style of Getsus. Because he doesn't care for his Pokemon whatsoever, not only can he not bring out the true power of his Pokemon, but he's actively weakening them. While for the player this wouldn't be possible just out of gameplay convenience, it would stand to reason that if Getsus isn't practicing his skills as a trainer, and his Pokemon aren't practicing their skills in battle, they would be weaker than in the original games. And we know from the anime there are moments where Pokemon get weaker all the time. With his team in this weakened state, we defeat Getsus. In doing so, we hand him a dose of reality.
How could this be? I'm the creator of Team Plasma. I'm perfect. I'm the absolute ruler who will change the world. And I've lost to some unknown trainer not once but twice?
Safe to say he has main character syndrome. Getsus says we don't know how to use Pokemon properly because we don't treat them like they are just tools. And N tries to get him to see reason.
It's hard to call you this, but... Father, please understand. Pokemon are not tools. Pokemon and humans take each other to greater heights. They are our wonderful partners. Some humans understand this. Why can't you?
Shut your mouth. Shut up, shut up, shut up.
Getsus is too far gone. He can't accept Pokemon for what they are, and he can't accept N for what he's become. A strong, empathetic trainer, capable of human emotions. And Getsus still doesn't understand that it's been him all this time who was the freak without human emotions. A member of the Shadow Triad gets us away. N and Reshiram thank us for our help, and N tells us the result of his travels. He learned that by being with humans, Pokemon can exhibit their true power. That's the truth in the matter, but has learned one day truth and ideals will align. Pokemon will be able to bring forth their true power without humans, and Pokemon will be freed from the oppression of Pokeballs. He tells us to put our own truths to the test, head for the Pokemon League, and become the champion. With that, N flies off with Reshiram. Steve catches back up with us, relieved that the saga with Team Plasma is over. He'll return to Espertia to give his sister her Purloin back, and we'll head over to the Pokemon League. In the aftermath, we can speak with Rd and ex-Team Plasma. Rd fills us in. The ship took off, and Colress acknowledged our victory. As thanks for showing him the true way to bring out the power of Pokemon, he'll disband Team Plasma, and will encourage others to walk a just path with Pokemon, formally ending the Team Plasma saga of Generation 5. With most of the events in the main story behind us, we can now head for Victory Road and beat the game. Beyond the initial giant chasm lies an exit to Route 23, initially blocked off by Team Plasma Grunts. Following it will take us to the new grand entrance of Victory Road. Waiting for us there is N. He reaffirms his new appreciation for trainers and Pokemon battles. Battles being a small component leading to big changes in those people, Pokemon, and the world. He then hands us the HM for Waterfall, which will be required for certain areas in the new version of Victory Road. He expresses his confidence that we'll successfully take down the Pokemon League and discover our own truth, and leaves us to it. We walk through the newly designed gates of Victory Road. In the sequels, it's an automated system that detects all of the badges you have as you go through. I can't believe this. How could the Pokemon League do this? Robots are stealing our jobs. What's next? Robot Pokemon trainers? But really, we're missing out on those badge messages here. I guess since the Legend badge isn't the last one, the message at the end wouldn't be quite as powerful though. Through the gates we go to Victory Road, and this is another one of those areas with some small differences between Black 2 and White 2. The route you take through Victory Road is much different, making for more unique travels each time you replay one of the games. One thing that's the same regardless is at the very end of Victory Road we meet up with our rival one last time, and he wants to have a battle with us before we face the Pokemon League. At some point I decided I was going to level cap for the Elite Four, and if it says anything about how good you are on experience at this point in the game, I had to struggle to stay under the level cap here. I even had to intentionally have Zeep faint to keep it from gaining experience that would push it to level 60, making for a rather interesting battle. With a victory, we get the TM for Thunderbolt, and Steve thanks us for helping him accomplish his goal to find his lost Pokemon, and he gives us some final inspirational words, hoping we can become the champion as proof that we're a trainer our Pokemon can be proud of. I would make a few final preparations with TMs and move tutors, making sure my movesets for these Pokemon were flawless. And in case you've noticed, I've kept the same team since Flockacy Ranch. This is one thing Black and White 2 absolutely nailed. The Pokemon diversity within the first few routes is strong enough to give you an actual team, one that you can take all the way to the end of the game. It gives a ton of solid options early on that lead to a lot of good coverage. As long as you get the HM situation handled, there's a wide variety of mons you can end up picking up. Once ready, I can put my sights on the Elite Four. The biggest change is that they are all 8 levels higher than the previous games, and 4 levels higher still when on challenge mode. They are all the same trainers with almost all the same Pokemon, but for some reason Jellicent is off of Chantal's team, going instead with Drifblim. And a more subtle change is Marshall's ace Pokemon switches from Mienshao to Conkeldurr. Being on challenge mode will add a non-Gen 5 Pokemon to each Elite Four member, and in doing so switches Caitlin's ace Pokemon to Metagross. We're on normal mode here, so all is basically the same as the originals, trusting in our Pokemon and taking down each Elite Four member. But wait, I lied. The biggest change here is that we actually fight the champion when doing the Elite Four for the first time. I'd step foot onto the magical statue taking me to the room of the champion. And who do we find? It's Iris. Not as impactful as some other champion reveals I think, because we only see her twice in this story. So seeing her now just doesn't hit quite as hard as a Steven or Cynthia reveal does. If you consider the events of Black and White 1, perhaps it's more impactful where she's just a gym leader there, or perhaps not a gym leader at all. She's super excited to face us in battle, since she knows we're a trainer that desires a victory with every ounce of our being. Our Pokemon have been through countless difficult battles, making them grow stronger, but also making those who face us stronger. She gives us a formal introduction. Iris, the Pokemon League champion, our final opponent. If you compare to her Black and White 1 team, her Druddigon and Haxorus make a return, opting to drop Fracture for a very illegal level 57 Hydreigon. She rounds out the team with some other ancient-style Pokemon, and honestly, I struggled with her quite a bit. Mostly because of this AI thing in this game where they still have healing items, but just don't seem to want to use more than one on the same Pokemon, which made Hydreigon a bit of a pain. But with her own healing items, we become the champion, and we prove that we're a trainer who shows care for their Pokemon. And together, we can bring forth strength that knows no bounds. But, you know, level 100, that's kind of the upper bound right there. We record our Pokemon into the Hall of Fame, and have completed Pokemon White 2. There's a pretty common sentiment when it comes to Gen 5. The original games are for a good story, and the sequels are for things to do in the post-game. And if you've been sticking through the whole video here, you'd probably understand why that is. Even early on, in the Black and White 1 story, we had interesting events, things we could analyze, in-depth characters that we could try our best to understand. But it takes a really long time for the story of Black and White 2 to really do anything, and it's clearly a sequel to the original games, as most of the story is dedicated to finishing up the characters and the plot of the originals. If I had to give a rating of each of these games on a scale from 1 to 10, Black and White 1 would be somewhere in the 9 to 10 range. And as you grow up and get older and become an old man like me, you'll probably appreciate this story and the game more and more. But Black and White 2 would probably land somewhere around a 6 or a 7, honestly. Things were just happening, and people's thoughts were just being said, and the characters don't feel nearly as cared for and thought about as the originals. It's still a fine game, don't get me wrong. You have the classic Pokemon experience, you still have all the improvements that Gen 5 brings, including the peak of Pokemon sprite design, but it just could have been more as a standalone game. When it comes to post-game activities, I didn't really do anything in Black. I chased down a few of the 7 sages, but that's about it, because I was kind of post-gamed out from everything I ended up doing in White 2. We can go back to Castelia City, taking the bridge out and heading back toward New Vemetown, seeing how things have changed along the way. The main difference being the species and level of Pokemon you find in the area are much higher, making it more suitable for post-game activities. And we can explore a few more towns and areas that we unlock after becoming the champion. But of course, catching all of the legendary Pokemon in the game is kind of the next step in this post-game. The main complaint I would have about that is the lack of the genies. You only have 5 Gen 5 legendaries to catch in this game, and leaving only 2 of them for the post-game, being Kyurem and Zekrom or Reshiram. Instead of getting the genies, we got the ability to catch the legendary Lake Trio from Sinnoh. They just really wanted you to play Dream Radar. By far the biggest task of the endgame would be collecting all of the medals, but I'm not that crazy. At least not yet. But if you like collecting Pokemon, perhaps you would go as far as to catch them all. Completing the Pokedex in Black and White 2 finally gives you a proper reward, as these were the first games to introduce the Shiny Charm, an item that boosts your odds of finding or hatching shiny Pokemon. But this is no easy task, not only because you have to get 649 Pokemon, but you can't get all of them with Gen 5 alone, meaning you need other games to be able to pull this off. And it will just take a long time because you have to complete those other games and get to the point where you can catch everything. At the time of recording this video, the bare minimum that you need is Diamond or Pearl, Black 1, White 1, and either Black or White 2, which you'd be looking around $320 for those, and hopefully you have 2 DS systems, but those actually aren't too expensive, unless you want a capture card or certain special editions. If you're familiar with the restrictions around catching things in older games, you're probably wondering, don't you need way more games than that? And if you want to do it 100% legit, yeah. But using glitches, including arbitrary code execution on Diamond or Pearl, will be able to take care of 493 Pokemon right away, with just 1 copy of either of those games. We'll just have to painstakingly transfer them all through the minigame. But after that, it's just doing everything you need to do to finish the Unova Pokedex. So beating both Black and White for all the genies and version exclusives beating Black or White 2 and catching everything else, making sure to grab all the starters and both new fossils. But you would still have those 4 pesky mythical Pokemon to deal with, and this takes us back to the Mystery Gift DNS exploit. And thankfully, between the originals and sequels, we can get all 4 of these. All in all, you're looking at probably about 100 to 150 hours start to finish if you were to do all of this stuff from scratch. Once I finished the story, even with having Pearl, Black, and White all set up, it still took me about 9 full days to get everything done, caught, and evolved. If you guys want a further in-depth video on the fastest way to do all of this, let me know. I could perhaps do a sort of Living Dex speedrun, but after about 9 days of catching stuff, I would finally see that magical 649 out of 649 and obtain the Shiny Charm. This Shiny Charm is extra special since it's the only one available in a 1 in 8192 game. So what do I do with it? When I started this video, I simply wanted to play Black and White 2, but I ended up playing Black and White 2 because I wanted to get to the bottom of it. Why is Gen 5 so loved? And why did it just never hit the same way for me? Why was Gen 5 one of my least played generations, to the point where I never even heard about the sequels back then? Or even if I did, I just wasn't interested in playing them. And I think the main reason is I never took the time to actually stop and smell the flowers. In Pokemon games, I was always mashing the A button, not really caring for what the NPCs had to say. Perhaps the lack of voice acting in Pokemon games was part of that. But for a young me, Sharon and Bianca were just rivals. Professor Juniper was just the professor. We were the good guys, and Team Plasma were the bad guys. But as an adult, I can appreciate the deep, complex nature of this story. Child me may have thought that after the Ferris wheel, N revealed himself to be a bad guy. But the truth is, it was never that black and white. Well, that'll wrap up this short video on Gen 5. I'll once again request that you like the video and subscribe. It's free to do, it helps me out, and you can always change your mind later. And once again, if you'd like to support the channel, helping me to do longer projects like this one that took about 2 months to make, it would be very much appreciated. But above all else, I would like to thank you very much for watching. I have been Trails, and I will catch you guys next time.